to the end zone. What a catch! Pressure, fumble! Out there all alone. Touchdown, Fire! Reverse, Slam Jones. He's gone.
One man to beat Allen. No!
Mitchell straight through. Gonna get to the end zone. Blitz, throw, end zone, touchdown, Nunez.
If a fight breaks out, I want you managers to be able to whip their managers. I want you trainers to be able to whip their trainers. I'm going to whip their coaches, and you players better whip their players. Nobody's safe in this game.
They kick the ball off. It is just a feeling that makes the little short hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
What a catch! Touchdown, Texas!
It was like two warring nations that came together one day in the month of October.
Williams got him on the blitz. OU is going to win it again.
Sooner fans look at that second Saturday in October as a crusade, a holy war.
Some of the fiercest hitting that I've ever seen in college football takes place in the Texas-Oklahoma game. It's one of the fiercest rivalries going in all of college football.
Half the Oklahoma football team comes from Texas. And that's pretty good fertilizer for a competitive crop.
Out there all alone. Touchdown, Fire!
The electricity, the excitement, the atmosphere that exists in that stadium is unbelievable.
You just didn't know who was going to win. But you knew there's one thing you could count on. You're going to be bruised and sore.
Texas OU is the rivalry game in all of college football.
And what a rivalry it is. Hello, everyone. I'm John Saunders. Since 1929, Oklahoma and Texas have taken the field at the Cotton Bowl in the Red River rivalry. The second Saturday in October is truly a special event in Dallas and represents the best of what college football should be. But the rivalry starts long before the players hit the field. The atmosphere at the Cotton Bowl is electric, as hundreds of thousands of fans make their pilgrimage to the Texas State Fair and a classic football matchup.
It's like a kaleidoscope of sounds, smells, and sight. You've got all of the things involving the Texas State Fair, which actually brings more people that day than the game itself.
Everywhere is so crowded. There's so many people there for the fair. Just getting there early, getting their turkey legs.
Where else can you send a runner at halftime out to the midway to get your corn dog and bring you on up to the booth?
The Texas State Fair lends an ambiance to it that's wonderful. Besides, I like corn dogs.
Corn dogs and football. Every year, one of the biggest state fairs in the country happens in Dallas on the second Saturday of October. And year after year, without fail, there's a hell of a football game at the Cotton Bowl, a game that Oklahomans and Texans anticipate and cherish.
It was like two warring nations that came together one day in the month of October, played each other, and then went away and didn't see each other for another year.
You know, a lot of people living in Weatherford, Texas, or, you know, I don't know, in Tyler, wherever. Hey, Joe, let's go to the fair today. Okay, let's get the kids. They take the kids to the fair, and they're in the middle of a holy war. It's a continuous combat, even from 2 hours before kickoff. Just trying to get to the stadium is competitive. As part of tradition of game day, the team buses snake their way through the immense crowds of the fair.
I don't know that you ever go to many big football games where you have to fight your way through a fair.
You're driving down and everybody's banging on the bus, yelling, singing the eyes of Texas.
You ride on that bus through there, that mile ride or so, I mean, them fans will get you ready. I mean, half the people are before you, the other half yelling at you, cussing at you.
You drive in, you got your Texas fans on one side, your Oklahoma fans on the other, and Oklahoma fans are cheering you on, and Texas fans are, you know, throwing things at you, hitting the bus.
There were so many people blocking the roads from both of the schools that they actually had police on horseback with billy clubs getting people out of the way so we could even get the buses into the dressing room.
Once you go through that gate, the talk just kind of hushes down and becomes whispers. Right? They start getting their game face on from the time they enter the gate.
Having run the gauntlet, both teams begin to get a taste of what's to come. And now these boys, many of whom grew up together and played together, prepare for their walk down the tunnel to the field where the combat begins.
Back then, the tunnel was different. When you came out of the tunnel, you walked side by side down the ramp. You could reach over and touch the Texas players, so you can imagine what was being said. The butterflies in your stomach were turning big time.
Terry Crouch was a senior at that time, and we're coming out the dressing room. I'm saying, Terry, I've been hearing all these stories all my life about this feeling I'm gonna have going down this tunnel in this OU Texas game. I don't feel anything. And he's very calm. He says, keep walking, you'll get it. We get down to the field, and as I bend over the stretch, I start throwing up all over the end zone. And somehow Terry Crouch sees me doing that, and he yells, now do you understand the feeling of going down the tunnel?
Can't hardly breathe. I mean, it's just, and once you hit the end of the tunnel, it's like, big explosion happens.
A sea of 72,000 screaming faithful dressed in crimson and cream or burnt orange await these players. The Cotton Bowl is literally divided down the middle by color.
You know, everybody told me how it was sectioned off, half orange, half crimson, and you don't understand until you see it, and I got sick.
But a minimum of 35,000 that don't like each other on that day. And they're pretty adamant about not liking each other. You have to always think about the people that are sitting on that line where the fans divide. They must fight for 3 hours and a half.
You can go right to the 50-yard line, and you can see an avid Longhorn fan being forced to sit next to an Oklahoma Sooner fan. And sometimes it can get ugly.
To see the magnitude of the game and the people there, burnt orange on one side, Boomer Sooner and Crimson and Cream on the other side, Big Bevo sitting down in the end zone. And I tell you, it's a sight to see, that's for sure.
With the players on the sideline and the faithful energized, the stage is set once again for this great rivalry to add a chapter to its deep, rich history. The year was 1900 when these two teams first met. Each year they would play in Austin, Norman, Houston, and Oklahoma City. But it was in 1929 that this historic game found its permanent home. Both teams signed a contract to play in Dallas at the Texas State Fair, and thus began the Red River Rivalry. Texas had dominated Oklahoma in the first part of the century, winning 29 of the first 42 meetings between 1900 and 1947. Then, over the span of the next decade, Oklahoma, under legendary coach Bud Wilkinson, would win 9 of the 10 matchups. But in 1957, Texas brought in a young 32-year-old named Darrell Royal, a former player of Wilkinson's at Oklahoma, as their new head coach. And things were about to change.
Wilkinson's in his heyday when Darrell arrived at Texas. Darrell remarked when he took over the program, the new coach is not inheriting a warm bed.
Darrell Royal had come to a struggling Texas team in 1957 with 2 jobs: turn the program around and beat Oklahoma. The Sooners had dominated the series recently, and it was Royal's big task to conquer Wilkinson's mighty team. The Longhorns were not able to turn it around in Royal's first year as coach, and it was looking bleak again in 1958, coming into the game as a big underdog.
That game meant a lot to us because I was a young coach, working hard at my job, trying to be acceptable.
It was student against teacher. Royal had played for Wilkinson a decade earlier. Now he was trying to prove himself as a coach.
Pass to George Blanche. Touchdown, Texas.
Texas would score first. It's then that Royal made a tactical move that surprised almost everyone in the Cotton Bowl. Royal sent in his team for a 2-point conversion. The 2-point conversion rule had only taken effect that season. Texas converted and went up 8-0.
Jim Davis grabs a Texas fumble and scampers 24 yards to score.
The Sooners would rally and come back to take a 14-8 lead, but Texas would score again in the fourth quarter.
Texas upsets Oklahoma 15-14.
Royal's decision to go for 2 had made the difference.
That game is tremendously ironic. Coach Royal was one of the real opponents of that 2-point conversion, and yet he used it in that game to beat Oklahoma.
In '58, Texas had lost 6 in a row, and Bud Wilkinson was the coach of Oklahoma, and they were expected to win again, and they didn't. A lot of Longhorn fans felt that that really was kind of a turning point, that things were going to be a lot different then.
It was probably the most important game that was played in all the 20 years I was here. We weren't established, and that gave us a little bit better footing.
Student had outwitted teacher. It was the beginning of the end of Oklahoma's dominance of the Longhorns they had enjoyed for a decade, and Texas, for the foreseeable future, would not look back. Royal could barely stand the idea of coaching against his mentor Wilkinson during the Red River rivalry. He was so wrought with nerves after the game that he left the post-game celebration in the Texas locker room to throw up outside. Regardless of those nerves, that 58 game would usher in an era of dominance by Texas. In 1963, the two coaches would meet for the final time, and the stakes had never been higher.
The Cotton Bowl is bulging, and Texas coach Darrell Royal, who played for Bud Wilkinson at Oklahoma, is seeking his 6th consecutive victory over his alma mater.
Oklahoma was #1. Texas was #2 going into the ball game. Both teams were unbeaten, obviously, and the rivalry at that point really had stirred to a boil. The two teams clearly were vying for national honors.
That's the game that probably defined the rivalry. Now it was more than just the Red River shootout. It was a battle for #1.
The national championship was most likely at stake, and the week leading up to the game had not been a good one for Oklahoma. Sophomore quarterback Mike Ringer had caught his elbow in an electric fan and was out for the season. On top of that, running back Joe Don Looney had made some disparaging remarks about the offensive line not blocking for him. The Sooners were in turmoil, yet they remained a 3-point favorite. It was Texas, though, who would ultimately dominate. The Longhorns scored first and never looked back.
The underdog Longhorns take the upper hand. Texas makes it look easy as the Longhorns lead 21-0 in the third quarter.
Texas defeated Oklahoma 28-7, which in those days was a pretty big score, and Texas moved to #1 in the country.
The Longhorns had taken the top-ranked Sooners and embarrassed them. That season, Texas would remain undefeated, its first unbeaten season since 1920. When all was said and done, Darrell Royal was at the top of his game, and Bud Wilkinson had coached his last game for the Sooners. In the 60s, Texas's Darrell Royal was the winningest coach of that decade. But in the window of time between 65 and 67, things weren't going well at Texas. They had lost 4 games each of those 3 years and had only gone to 1 bowl game. In 1968, needing to spark the Longhorns' offense, Royal had talked to Emory Bullard, his offensive coordinator, about a new formation. Little did he know that they were about to revolutionize the game of college football with something called the wishbone.
Emory Bullard found that particular kind of an offense at a high school game and refined it and evolved it.
I liked the concept of the wishbone because there were so many similarities to the split T that I had learned under Coach Wilkinson.
The wishbone would allow him to have a lead blocker and still run some of the plays that the veer had included. The Oklahoma game really was the coming out party for the wishbone.
Texas upsets its arch rival Oklahoma 26-20.
Texas scored late in the game, and the wishbone was born and went on to win 30 straight games.
However, Texas almost didn't win that game, trailing Oklahoma 20-19 in the 4th quarter. The Longhorns still had to drive the length of the field.
In that drive, we ran a curl with the outside receiver inside. And so as I rolled out, I see him curling wide open, and I throw the ball to him, and the inside safety was picking it off going the other way, and he dropped the ball.
Texas went on. Steve Wooster ran for the winning touchdown. And I've always wondered in my mind, if Oklahoma had won that game, would that have had an impact on Royals thinking about the wishbone? Because they did get off the hook that day, and they kept winning.
Texas 26, Oklahoma 20. It was the Sooners' 10th loss to Texas in 11 years. And as one Dallas reporter wrote, losing to Texas is one thing, but getting beat by the Texas passing game is another. The wishbone offense had proven successful, and it wasn't long after that that many followed in the footsteps of Royal and his offense.
It swept across the country because of the success we were having. And then the other teams started putting it in immediately, and they had some success.
We were fortunate to change to that offense, and if we hadn't, I'd never been the head coach at the University of Oklahoma because we would all been probably fired.
Texas would dominate with the wishbone offense. But in 1969, an 11-game winning streak would be in jeopardy.
There he goes, all alone.
As the Longhorns trailed 14-0 early in the first quarter.
When we were down 14, I was wishing it wasn't going to reach 28. I remember telling the squad, there's a hell of a fight going on out there. Why don't you guys get in it?
The lead wouldn't last.
Out there all alone. Touchdown, Spire.
The Longhorns mounted a serious comeback.
Riddleson, touchdown.
But Coach Royal was still angry at halftime that the game was that close.
He came in that locker room. He was on the coaches. He was on the players. He tried not to make eye contact. Whenever he'd move over here, I'm staying behind somebody. I'm just moving with, so he never sees me when he's hollering. That referee comes in there and asked him, said, Coach, do you want to defend this end or you want the ball? He said he didn't care. He was mad.
Royal's halftime speech worked.
Switzer getting in.
The Longhorns would dominate the second half.
Ooh, and the ball takes off and is intercepted.
And go on to a 27-17 win.
Texas just had the stuff of a national champion in '69, and they proved it that day against Oklahoma. Whenever asked to prove it, they were able to.
Texas would follow up its national championship in '69 with a consecutive title in 1970. But the ensuing decade would see the return to glory of the Sooners. Barry Switzer took over the program in 1973, leading the team to undefeated seasons that year and the next, when the Sooners went 11-0 and won the national championship. They repeated as champs in 1975, winning 11 games against just one defeat. It was the beginning of an era for one coach and the end of an era for another, as Darrell Royal was in his last years of coaching for Texas. 1976 would see Royal's last game on the sidelines against the Sooners, and it certainly didn't lack fireworks or drama.
There are times when rivalries get bitter. Coach Royal had been such an icon at Texas, and Coach Switzer was a new kid on the block.
I think enough has been said about that. There's no sense digging up bones. We had it accurate. That's my opinion, and there's no need getting back into it again.
The day before the 1976 Texas-OU matchup, a bombshell exploded in the media. Longhorn coach Darrell Royal accused OU of spying on his team. He went as far as to offer head coach Barry Switzer and the alleged spy $10,000 each if they took a lie detector test. Switzer refused and in turn said that if any spying had happened, it wasn't on his watch.
1976, the Dallas papers came out with a spy incident that happened in '72 when I was an assistant coach. I did not know the spy incident happened until it happened. It was after the fact that I knew about it when it was released publicly. I was the head coach, so I was the defendant of my coaching staff. I said it never happened under my regime. A lot of people thought it was a current situation, and it wasn't. It was 4 years earlier that this actually happened. And it did happen. There's no question about it. It did happen, and I'll admit that. But it didn't happen while I was head coach.
Whatever firestorm was happening off the field was sure to make this year's matchup an interesting one. While Switzer and Royal kept their distance in pregame warm-ups, they were forced to face each other as President Gerald Ford was in attendance and would perform the pregame coin toss. As the president and the two coaches headed down the ramp, there was undeniable tension and an understandably cold welcome to Coach Royal from the Sooner faithful.
I know the President Ford has got to be, what's going on here? These guys are really ready to play, because we never shook hands, we never spoke to each other. We just spoke to the president, and we walked down the ramp. No one said a word. The president's trying to make small talk. No one said anything.
And Coach Royal, who had such wonderful ties to the state of Oklahoma and OU football, became an enemy of Oklahoma because he told the truth. And it was really sad to see a man who had contributed so much basically cursed by his own people as he walked into the stadium that day with Coach Switzer and President Ford.
I think Darrell Royal regrets it because he made a big deal out of it, and it just became a bitter thing with him and Switzer. And this was his school. He loves Oklahoma.
The drama of Royal's accusations had temporarily upstaged the game, but the action between the lines certainly didn't disappoint. Oklahoma had come in the heavy favorite, but by the fourth quarter had only managed to score one touchdown to tie the game at 6.
Royal has said on numerous occasions he thought his team played its defensive masterpiece in that game. They had the game under tight control for 3.5 quarters.
Late in the fourth quarter, with 2 minutes to go in the ball game, we scored to tie the ball game. I had an extra point kicker who had never missed an extra point in his career, Uwe von Schamann, and von Schamann never had a chance to kick it because the snap was high and the holder bobbled it. That's a game that I thought we should have won.
I've never felt that God ever got involved in a football game, but if there's ever been a chance for the Almighty to get involved, he might have looked down and seen Coach Royal on the sideline and said, you know, this sucker has suffered enough. I am not going to let him lose this game.
That 6-6 tie would turn out to be the last game in the series for the legendary Coach Royal. He would retire at the end of the season with a record of 167 wins, 47 losses, and 5 ties. Maybe none as hard to swallow as the one that day in the Cotton Bowl. Darrell Royal had lost 4 and tied once versus Barry Switzer before his retirement when, according to legend, he could stomach the sight of Switzer no more. The post-Royal era began with one of his former assistants, Fred Akers, who burst onto the Texas scene in 1977. His first team went 11-0 through the regular season. Only a Cotton Bowl loss to Notre Dame denied Akers a national championship. In his first 5 years as coach, they would win 4 out of 5 in the Red River Rivalry. The start of the 80s, though, was not the dream for the Longhorns. They would struggle to keep up with Switzer at OU. However, in 1984, the Longhorns had the #1 team in the country, while the Sooners were ranked 3rd. That year, the Red River Rivalry could have been called the Red River Rainout, as these teams met in a classic and controversial game.
I got up in the morning, looked out the hotel window, and the sky was black. And there was lightning flashing and thunder was rumbling, and I knew that you couldn't call it, but I thought we would need an ark to get there. The walk from the car, the water was half knee deep.
It has been very seldom that the Texas OU game has had rain. The 1984 game was certainly an exception to that rule because it didn't rain, it poured.
Driving into the stadium, I thought it would be empty. There was not one seat available. I'd never seen people sit in the rain and watch a game like that and cheer and scream and fight.
The field was soaked, the players were soaked, and the fans were soaked. But the water couldn't douse the fire of the Red River Rivalry. Driving rain that lasted for 3 hours had turned the artificial turf at the Cotton Bowl into an ice rink.
I talked to Gary Gibbs, who was the defensive coordinator. We both said we have got to start running north and south. We can't run the option today. You can't stand up.
The difficulty of controlling the ball was evident as the game included 2 safeties as each team suffered bad snaps that sailed over the punters' heads.
Out of the end zone. That ball was so high, the 7-foot kicker could not have got that.
Early on, Texas would best the weather.
He's got a man wide open. Touchdown, Texas. Bill Boy Bryant.
That score plus a Jeff Ward field goal would give Texas the early 10-0 lead. Running back Steve Sewell would dominate, scoring on runs of 5 and 12 yards.
Outside Joe Sewell, touchdown.
Leading 15-10 in the fourth quarter, OU would intentionally take a safety, allowing Texas to cut the lead to only 3 points. The Longhorns took over at their 44.
Over the middle, Harris has got it. First down at the Oklahoma 21-yard line.
The Longhorns went for the end zone. OU defensive back Keith Stansbury intercepted in the end zone. But that day, the refs saw it differently.
84 was a horrible game because the outcome was not legitimate. I mean, Keith Stansbury intercepted the pass in the last minute. Game over, Oklahoma wins, except, the referee calls it incomplete.
That incomplete pass into the end zone set up Jeff Ward's 32-yard field goal attempt on the final play.
Kick is up. It is good. It's a 15-15 tie.
That may be the worst tasting game for both sides because Sooners had to walk away thinking, we know we won this game. Texans had to walk away saying, we didn't play to win, and we didn't win.
Yeah, that old saying, it's like kissing your sister is true. But at that point, I thought that was our only option.
At one point in the fourth quarter, we went for 2 and we didn't make it. In the dressing room after the game, I told Coach Switzer, I'm really sorry about the 2-point play. And he said, it was a great game. Don't worry about it. Let's move forward.
He had nothing to apologize about. The offense did their job. The defense did their job, but there was a couple of official calls that blew 2 plays. The last 4 plays of the ball game, there were 2 calls that were horrendous and gave the game for a tie for Texas.
It was something that affected him too, because I could tell when you're at Oklahoma, that's the only game that matters.
A bitter taste was left in Switzer's mouth that day. Despite the tie game, the Sooners would go on to play for the national title and lose. They won it the next year, going 11-1 and upsetting top-ranked Penn State. Switzer's teams were racked by frequent scandals, and it was a series of brushes with the law by his players following the 1988 season that led to his retirement at Oklahoma early in 1989. With a career record of 157, 29, and 4, his winning percentage of .837 is 4th best all time. The Heisman Trophy is the most prestigious award in all of college football. The Red River Rivalry has seen a number of players who have hoisted the trophy. It all started with Sooner legend Billy Vessels in 1952, who finished second in the nation with 1,072 rush yards and was a vital part of the Sooners' 1950 national title team. The Sooners' running back tradition would continue 17 years later as Steve Owens would capture the coveted trophy. Steve had a remarkable season in 1969, setting the Oklahoma rushing touchdown record with 23. Still today, his record stands. But what few know is that the great Sooner had almost been a Longhorn.
I remember Mickey Mantle called me, the great Mickey Mantle, and he was friends with Darrell Royal. He called me and said, "You really need to take a serious look at Texas." Pretty strong for a Northeast Oklahoma boy, getting a call from Mickey Mantle saying you need to look at Texas. But I grew up wanting to be an Oklahoma Sooner, and I never did really see myself playing anywhere else but Oklahoma.
Though Owens had stayed loyal to his home state and become a Sooner, Texas had its share of great running backs as well. One of those running backs was a bruiser by the name of Earl Campbell.
Campbell breaks away and does it the hard way.
Campbell won the Heisman in '77 while leading the nation in rushing. The next season, he would be the first overall pick in the NFL draft.
Earl Campbell was a defiant running back, defiant football player. He didn't believe in running around anybody. You get the hell out of my way, I'm coming. And if you're in the way, I'm going to run over you.
Earl Campbell's the best football player I've ever seen, without a doubt. He was an absolute warrior when he needed to be. He could outrun you. He could outlast you. Some of his greatest runs were 4 to 7 yards, you know. He'd be hit twice by everybody on the field, and still going.
When I first saw Earl Campbell, he reminded me of Jim Brown. As I look back on it, close my eyes, and think about the many great runs that I was around with Earl Campbell, I don't remember one man alone bringing him down. Once contact was made, you had to have help in a hurry. Earl just refused to be stopped.
While at Texas, Campbell would have to face off with another great back from Oklahoma, Billy Sims, who had a tremendous season in 1978 with 22 rushing touchdowns. That performance propelled him to the Heisman win that year. Sims and Campbell, although similar in jersey number, were very different in their style of running.
Billy Sims was the kind of guy you didn't always get a clean shot at. You got a piece of him, but you almost never got the whole of him.
I'm from East Texas, and he's from sort of Southeast Texas, and he won the trophy a year before me, and I won it the year after him. We both wore number 20, so we'll always be linked together in that standpoint.
Speaking of jersey numbers, the Texas running back tradition would continue in 1998 with Ricky Williams. Williams would wear number 37 as a tribute to Doak Walker, the famed SMU running back who had recently passed away.
Doak Walker died the week before the game. And Ricky came in to me and said, "Can I put Doak's picture up on my locker?" We had a rule that you didn't put pictures up, and we changed the rule for that week because he was so close to Doak Walker. We were getting ready to play in the house that Doak built at the Cotton Bowl when he played at SMU. And then Ricky asked us if he could wear number 37 in the game against Oklahoma. We called the NCAA. They gave us permission. It was one of the neatest days of my coaching career because he scored a 37-yard touchdown. He pointed to Doak in heaven and said a little prayer after he scored, wearing the number 37.
Gave me chills. I mean, it was like, oh my God. It was a very memorable moment because in that very stadium, Doak spoke to us on the way to our championship game for the Southwest Conference. And so it just brought back all of those memories.
I had such great respect for Doak Walker. He was such an elegant, classy person. So it was special when Ricky Williams showed up at 37. It brought a tingle to me.
When we got in the dressing room after the win, he brought the Walker family in and took the dirty jersey number 37 off and gave it to them in the dressing room. And there were a lot of tears in there that day.
It was a special moment in a special career for Williams.
Williams breaks a hole. Hello, record book!
He would win back-to-back season rushing titles in 1997 and 98 and took home the Heisman Trophy while setting the NCAA all-time rushing record. Finally, after 5 running backs to win the Heisman for both schools, Jason White, a quarterback, would have his turn. During his 4 games against Texas, he never lost, leading the Sooners to consecutive national title games in January of 2004 and 2005.
To come here from Tuttle, being born in Oklahoma, it's definitely a dream. When Coach Stoops came in and recruited me, I got excited.
Jason White is a poet, and there are times when he's a passer, and here's the difference. But old Jason had a lot of grit in him. And when he had to do it, he could go out there and do it. That separates you from the masses pretty quickly.
With all of the great players and coaches who have passed through both of these programs, one of the most interesting facts about the Red River rivalry is the streakiness of winning. Legendary coach John Bible gave Texas the upper hand early on. Bud Wilkinson in Oklahoma went 9-1 from 1948 to 57. When Darrell Royal took over at Texas, he won 12 of 13 games from 1958 to 1970. Then from 71 to 88, during Barry Switzer's era, Oklahoma would win 11 of 18. Once Switzer retired, Texas was back on top, winning 8 of 11. And with Bob Stoops as head coach at Oklahoma, the Sooners have currently won the last 5 meetings. It seems that regardless of strength or quality of each program that particular year, the series continues to be filled with stretches of domination of one team over the other.
Nobody has the advantage at the Cotton Bowl. It's a no excuses game. It's half and half, 36,000 one side, 36 the other. If you lose, it's because you lost. The other team was better than you. So the next year, you got that little mental thing going that said, no, they were better than us last year. We weren't on the road. Nothing conspired to beat us. We got beat by a better team. And that tiny lack of confidence maybe contributes, and it just snowballs and snowballs because the streakiness is amazing. It's really a roller coaster series.
And that's what it comes down to, knowing that you can instead of hoping that you can.
I think it's just having that experience, knowing that you can beat that guy across from you, knowing that you have the year before or the year before that, and just the confidence that you have playing, and I think that's why it makes it so streaky.
And there's no reason for that game to be streaky. But after all is said and done, you total all the games up, it's about 50-50.
Why that is, you can't say one particular thing. I look at them as each of them are individual. Just because you've won one doesn't mean you're going to win another.
With Texas in the middle of a dominating streak of winning 8 out of the 11 matchups between 1989 and 99, Oklahoma hired a young, hot defensive coordinator in hopes of returning the program to its former glory.
Bob Stoops has done the most outstanding job of any coach in college football. He came into a program that through the decade of the 90s struggled. He's brought it back to the prominence that it once enjoyed and should enjoy.
Coach Switzer has summed it up several times in saying the giant has woken up again. This is a place that's always had great tradition, great pride, great history. And we went through a period there where we struggled, but we continued to have great players. All it took was the right guy to come in.
I've always said that the best job opportunities in coaching are at schools that have known great tradition, where things have kind of fallen off the edge of the table for a few years, because it can and will come back.
The program truly is where it was in the 50s and the 70s and the 80s, with a remarkable string of success. It's amazing what he's done, and he's done it with confidence. It's a mismatch in the Cotton Bowl. Not Bob Stoops and Mack Brown. It's just a mismatch in the mental state of both teams. I don't think Texas goes into that game very confident anymore. And I promise you, Oklahoma goes in convinced it can't lose.
After beating Florida State in the 2001 Orange Bowl to capture the school's 7th national championship, Stoops turned toward the 2001 Red River Rivalry when an injury to starter Nate Hibble would bring in a then unknown Jason White.
It all went by so fast. I didn't have much time to take it in or even think about it. When I went in the game, I was so nervous, and even spitting out the plays was rough. I remember the first pass I threw, I got hit in the back pretty hard. And after that, I kind of relaxed a little bit. It woke me up a little.
We've got confidence in Jason. He's a competitor and a guy that we have felt all along was going to be awfully good. I felt Jason's ready to go. Let's put him out there. He's got an ability to make plays.
Right for the end zone. Just short of it.
The biggest play of that game, we had another play called all week in practice. You know, we worked on if they gave us a certain defense, we were audible and out of this play and running an option. And I came to the line and I looked at the defense, and it was the same defense we've seen all week. I audibled to the option and pitched it to Quentin, and he scored.
The mighty Oklahoma defense would hold Texas to just a field goal, heading deep into the 4th quarter.
We nursed that 7-3 lead, I think, throughout the second half. They make a mistake on the punt return.
Inside the 5-yard line. What was Basher doing?
You're feeling a little bit better. There's still a lot of time left, but you do have them backed up.
There's 2 minutes left. We're 98 yards away. We're down 7-3. We got a chance to drive the length of the field and win the game.
I know Chris Sims, in talking about it later, said they felt confident they were going to go in and do it.
One of the last things that Mike Stoops told Roy Williams was don't gamble, don't creep up. We're not going to blitz.
On the same blitz earlier in the game, Roy had basically done the same thing, went flying over the top, and the back cut him, didn't even get close on the blitz. We had called a timeout, and Mike Stoops had him over on the sideline and was discussing, you know, this is what we're going to run. He said, now don't dive over this time.
Whatever you do, don't leave your feet. Don't leave your feet. Don't leave your feet.
Because if he catches your feet, you're made to look like a fool as you go eating turf, you know, on your face.
Chris Sims drops back, and all of a sudden, here comes somebody flying through the air. It's almost too quick to know it was Roy Williams. All of a sudden, the ball's just, tossed up like a loaf of bread. Teddy Lehman's right there. It happened so quickly that you really didn't realize what had happened.
Williams got him on the pass. OU is going to win it again.
In those games like that, the great players make the great plays. And Roy Williams made a great play in a great game.
I'm an emotional guy. I do, sometimes I do things, and even though Mike told me not to jump, I'm instinct. And something told me to jump, and I jumped.
The Roy Williams of Texas, named Roy Williams of Oklahoma, Superman, and you could see why on that play. You don't see many safeties leaping fullbacks in a single bound to go take the head off the quarterback, but that's what Roy Williams did.
Really, I thought characterized the take no prisoners attitude that Oklahoma brought to that particular game. They weren't going to be denied. They were not going to let Texas beat them. Certainly not let Chris Sims beat them.
I'm gonna tell you about football. If you do something the coach tells you not to do, and you do it right, and something happens, they ain't gonna say nothing to you. But if you mess up, they gonna cuss you out. So I was just like, man, if I do this, I hope I make the play, because if I don't, I'm in trouble.
We were all laughing in the locker room afterwards, and Mike said, that's exactly how I wanted you to do it.
As this new century begins to unfold, this is certainly one rivalry which will continue to produce extraordinary athletes, coaching legends, intriguing stories, and fierce matchups for years to come, all on the second Saturday of October in the middle of a state fair. I'm John Saunders. Thanks for joining us.
If you could pick a moment in your entire college football career to make one play, to make one catch, one run, one tackle, one interception, one sack, you want it to be the Cotton Bowl. You want it to live in your school's history and tradition forever. And that's a moment. It's a moment on stage that will never go away.
Touchdown Sooners! The Sooners win!
Texas and Oklahoma is something that needs to be on the college football landscape. It always has been, and for it to be back where it is now is something that college football wants and needs.
You take teams like Oklahoma, Texas, two great heavyweight champions, like Ali or Frazier or Foreman. There's a great respect. There's a fear of losing. You're going to give your best.
One man to beat Allen. No!
I think the game has so much class. I don't ever remember as a player having a bad word between a Texas player. You just go out and play hard, and both of us are trying to win.
You go back to the campuses to interview the players on both schools, and you mention something about that, their eyes light up immediately. The players remember everything that happened in that game. I mean, with Texas, the memories have been so painful. They can't wait to get out. They can't wait for that game to start so they can rectify the loss of the year before.
Remember, these are kids, 18, 19-year-old kids. Think yourself when you were that age. It's just overwhelming for a kid to have lost every game like these Texas kids. Some of them never beat them in their college career. That'll live with them the rest of their lives.
Having to live here and not ever beat the University of Texas in a game was a heavy burden on my shoulders. Growing up here in the state of Oklahoma, possibly living here someday with my kids and my wife and my family, I mean, it was a concern of mine. Thank God I won my senior year.
And he hits long, touchdown!
The Texas-Oklahoma game is as good as it gets. I mean, I produced the Super Bowl, I produced the U.S. Open golf. There's really no feeling that's any better than being outside the Cotton Bowl for Texas OU.
There's so many guys from the state of Texas went across that Red River so many times, and usually it's mainly for the bragging rights during the off season.
It's a common thing now for Texas lads to go to North. And then it's a common thing for grandma to lock the door and not let them back in the house when they do that, too.
I wish I could do it one more time. You know, you could run down through that tunnel one more time and run in that end zone one more time.
I get goosebumps just talking about it. If you're lucky, you get 4 opportunities. So you try to make every one of them count.
What a hit from Wilson.
It's pretty phenomenal walking that state fair and know, hey, in less than 4 hours, you'll either be a winner or a loser.
If I had to do it all over again, I might have traded the Heisman Trophy for a win over Texas, you know?
Number 8 Oklahoma versus number 2 Texas. Early in the first quarter, OU would get the ball after a Texas punt. They would drive to the UT 10-yard line.
72,000 plus watching as Mildren fakes to Owens. There he goes all alone. A beautiful call by sophomore Jack Mildren of Abilene, Texas.
And a beautiful fake by Steve Owens.
Yesterday, number 11 celebrated his 19th birthday. And Oklahoma has taken a 6-0 lead, driving 41 yards in 8 plays with a 9-yard run by the quarterback, Mildren. His 4th touchdown of the year, the point after by Durr. It's up and good.
After a James Street interception, the Sooners would drive the ball deep into Texas territory.
1st and goal at the 6. And Steve Owens.
What a block by Zabel that time. He turned out. Watch it again. See the blocking form ahead. Number 73 turning back to make a straight block. That's Darrell Emmett.
A short kick set up the first Oklahoma touchdown. Now an interception has them close again. On a 2nd and goal, this was Owens, number 36, trying to get in, but Scott Henderson was there.
And that was one time that the Texas defense was right by going for Owens.
So now it's 3rd and goal, and as you see, the ball now is at the 2, a loss of a yard. Look at Horn. 3 minutes and 89 seconds remaining. In the first quarter, Oklahoma leads 7-0. They have the ball. And Owens gets his 8th touchdown of the year.
There was no daylight, Chris, so he had to go over the top.
Thanks to the blocks of Steve Carlton and Jack Porter on the left side of that Oklahoma line. And it's 13-0. Underdog Oklahoma.
On the next drive, Texas would take it to the OU 24-yard line.
3rd and 11. Street gets some pass blocking. Out there all alone. Touchdown, Spire! Texas has moved from its own 42 in 4 plays. Touchdown.
He was wide open. Spire, again, let's watch it. Ronnie Johnson, the safety man, trying to move out with him. Little crossing pattern. As a halfback, Bertelsen came to the inside, and Spire beats the crisscross defense and makes a miraculous catch, getting the ball right over the top of his head.
And the kick now by Happy Feller. And Happy Feller just put his 16th consecutive point-after attempt between the uprights.
Watch it again. Street throwing deep and Spire wide open.
Now in the second quarter, the Longhorns would go deep into the red zone.
First and goal. Texas now trying to cap an 80-yard drive. Bertelsen touchdown. Jim Bertelsen has scored his 4th touchdown of the year. Number 35, as Bob McKay throws the block. And there are 2 happy folks. Even happier is this youngster from Hudson, Wisconsin.
Early in the third quarter, Texas would try and take the lead.
Happy Feller, number 5, has kicked 1 of 2 field goals this year. And let's see if he can do it again. From the 17 plus the 10 of the end zone, a 27-yard kick on an angle, severe angle. Up and it's good.
Later in the third quarter, Texas is driving, trying to put the game away.
And an interception. Vince LaRosa of Brooklyn, New York, handing back to Joe Pierce. And Pierce is at the Texas 24.
What a spark a play happens to be every now and then.
There's a Brooklyn boy who plays for Oklahoma that made the interception, and then Pierce, number 41.
That interception would lead to this OU field goal.
Into the wind on a acute angle because it'll be in so close. Coming from about the 12 and a half plus the 10 yards of the end zone, 22 and a half. Bruce Durr, who is 0 for 1 this year, will try the attempt, and this will tie it up if he makes it. Up and good.
Texas gets the ball again and goes down the field once more.
Ehrig has replaced Spire at split end. And there goes Coy. Ted Coy, Texas, touchdown. 68 yards, 3 plays, and the Longhorns, and we have a penalty against Texas.
That will change the crowd noise slightly.
Illegal procedure position on the call.
Let's take a look at the play again. It's the inside belly play going to the left of your screen. There's the first fake to Wooster. Beautiful fake. And there goes Coy. Great block by Bertelsen. Wooster down there to help block as Coy takes it into the end zone, but the penalty brings the ball back.
Without that TD, Texas would be forced to kick a field goal.
The last 3 years, this game has been decided by field goals. There have been 9 field goals kicked in the last 3 years. We've already had 2 in this game thus far.
From the 11 plus the 10 of the end zone, 21 yards on that acute angle again. Heller up, and Texas takes the lead.
Finally, leading 2017 in the fourth quarter, Street and the Longhorns look to put the nail in the coffin.
Worcester driving hard.
Let's watch it again in slow motion. I believe that's the last play Oklahoma expected. They were looking for the outside triple option. There's the handoff, and you can see the fake. Marvelous blocking by the Texas line as the Oklahoma men are moving to the outside, expecting Street to have kept the ball. Worcester driving to the 7-yard line.
17 carries for Worcester, 62 yards. Marker is down as Bertelsen rolls into the end zone. Was not officially in, but let's watch for the penalty. Bertelsen, number 35, Coy, 24, offside.
Very little doubt about what to do here, Chris.
Offside against the defense. Declining, of course, the penalty. It brings up a 2nd and goal. And the ball is at the Oklahoma 1. Texas leading 20-17, 4:44 to go. Arick 45 to the left. Worcester getting in for the TD. A marker is down. Texas has gone 23 yards in 5 plays. Worcester scoring the touchdown, putting the Longhorns ahead 26-17. Good. It all started in 1869. Now each week it's college football on ABC. The score, Texas 27, Oklahoma 17.
On a rainy day, Texas would get the ball off an OU missed punt on the 26-yard line.
Harry Orr drifts into the short range, but Dodge goes deep. He's got a man wide open. Touchdown, Texas. Bill Boy Bryant.
Texas would add a field goal. OU would get a TD and a safety. In the third quarter, the Sooners would drive to the Texas 12-yard line.
Outside goes Sewell. Touchdown.
Now let's watch the blocking. Number 85 goes in for the linebacker, and that's Berryhill, the tight end. He's going in, block the linebacker. Now the back is going to come out, Spencer Tillman. Watch Tillman right there. You see that the Oklahoma linemen got everybody bunched up right there. No one grasped, though, and the Texas defense relaxes just a little bit. And Sewell breaks to the outside, picking up the block of Tillman and goes in for the touchdown.
That's an impressive possession, 71 yards in 10 plays in weather conditions like this. And it's raining again, and they're going for 2. Bradley wants to throw it, loops it towards Sewell, off his hands, incomplete. Stephen Braggs came over and got a hand on it. And even though Steve Sewell was able to get his hands on it, he could not hold it. In 6 minutes and 12 seconds of the third quarter, Oklahoma has scored 15 points, and they lead by 5.
Then in the fourth quarter, Texas would go for the win.
First down and goal to go, Texas at the Oklahoma 2. Terry Orr back in at I-back, the big man, and he hits it down to the 1.
How strange things can turn around. Who is going to make the big play? Would you think it would be a freshman tailback, listed number 3 in the lineup, played only a few plays, fresh, has that speed, and he was a difference in that play was his speed, his determination, just the freshman.
In the 12 times that 1 and 2 have met in regular season play since 1943, 2 has won only 1 time. Second down and goal. At the Oklahoma 1, it's Orr. Notion. They deny it at the line of scrimmage.
Now will Freddie Akers try to gamble a little bit? Sometimes he tries to go outside. It's going to be interesting. I believe I would stay with that big horse. And behind that offensive line, the most experienced side of that offensive line is on the left. They're running right at Tupper. Boy, that Tupper got penetration, and Bosworth came over the top. Just as pretty a defensive play as you could make. Too close to go outside. 2 downs to make 1 yard for a national championship potentially.
Third and goal. Orr. He didn't make it.
Nope. And he didn't make it. Great second effort by the linebacker.
Kevin Nelson has come back in at the I-back position for Texas. Texas just inches away from the Oklahoma goal line. It was Nelson who made the big play that gave them this opportunity to regain the lead. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get the ball. He's got it on a sweep right. Oklahoma stringing him out. They got him! They got him at the 3-yard line.
Can't cut, Keith.
Nope.
No way to cut. Didn't have a chance. A gutty defense. He's going to play 11 men. Watch Switzer right here. Let's see if we can get his reaction once he realizes the defense made the play.
He jumped too high. We couldn't see it.
Jumped out of the picture. Well, Texas got how many timeouts they got, Keith? Can you tell? I can't find it. Let's see Akers' reaction.
After an OU safety, Texas had one more drive in them.
Kevin Nelson is the I-back. Jerome Johnson is the fullback. They send Nelson wide into the slot, give him 3 wide receivers. And Dodge back. Throws it short to his fullback Johnson out of the backfield. Johnson makes something out of nothing. Ball squirting loose.
He called it dead, though, Keith. He called it dead.
It's been called down at the 40, near the 47 of Oklahoma. He was on the ground when the ball came popping out.
But I wonder which Oklahoma player made the contact. The second man up knocks the ball out, and he makes some contact. There's Bosworth. It wasn't him. Now Johnson hits him first. Oh, boy. That ball
42, Paul Miliazzo.
Miliazzo. The ball was loose.
10 seconds. I tell you, you had to kind of cinch up your belt to make that decision.
Boy, how many... The clock will not start since it was on the incomplete pass. Only start on the snap.
Quarterback sack here, though, and they might be out of field goal range. He puts it in the corner of the end zone. And it is incomplete.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I thought that one official was reaching for a flag.
I did too, Keith. He was right there on top of the play. There were 2 of them there. We have a chance at home to see Bryant. He's just going to fade over towards the boundary, throw it up. Johnson goes up. Woo. Stanberry did catch the ball, but now they're trying to decide whether he was in bounds or not.
Apparently he was out of bounds.
Didn't have control with 1 foot in bounds while he had control.
32-yard field goal. That equals his longest of his career at Texas. 32 for Ward. One for one from that distance this year. The snap is high. The kick is up. It is good. And time runs out. And it's a 15-15 tie. So Ward from 32 yards makes his second field goal of the season at that distance. And all of the heat that Eddie Kitchen could put on the young man, and he delivered it, and the Oklahoma players have just absolutely collapsed on the field in disappointment. Barry Switzer now talking to John McClintock there, and I'm sure Barry a little upset over the call in the corner of the end zone where it appeared that Stansbury had caught the ball on the ricochet, but they ruled him out of bounds.
Let's see it again. Stanberry is going to catch the deflected ball. Both men go up and bat the ball forward. Stanberry, if he has possession, 1 foot in bounds, which he clearly does, has both feet in bounds as he catches the ball. They are still in bounds. Now let's see it again. Oh, look how far they are from the boundary. There's plenty of time for Stanberry to catch the ball. There he is. He's got it. See if he gets possession of it. No official sees it. They're both officials are behind. The one on the left that we're seeing should be behind the play. He would have seen it. Too bad for Oklahoma. Break for Texas.
Too bad.
Well,
there'll be
raging and thunder over that.
Yep.
We joined the game early in the second quarter, 3rd and 2 for OU.
They hand it off. This is Gerald Moore. Touchdown Sooners.
Thunder and lightning. Here comes Moore. You play defense. He breaks the tackles, and Oklahoma's on the board.
In the third, rookie quarterback James Brown would drive the Sooners to the 9-yard line.
2nd and goal. A trips left formation. Nowhere to go for Brown, but into the end zone. Brown scores.
Stadium's rocking.
A 13-play, 81-yard drive, using up 7:25 on the clock.
Texas would add a field goal and look for some more.
Split back set. Lucas in motion. They give it into the end zone, wide open, touchdown Texas. Fitzgerald. Another look at that touchdown, Tim, by Fitzgerald.
Brown is so cool and composed. Coming at you, reverse angle, let it roll, and here comes the play action. The fake, the linebackers are frozen. Brown just lays it up, Fitzgerald wide open. They didn't even see him coming.
Texas leads by 10.
OU would get a field goal, then the Sooners had one drive to get the win.
McGee. For Mills, and he's got it. Mills out of bounds to the 17 as the Sooners march on.
And again, Victor Frazier never located the ball. Take a look now at the right side. It's Mills and Frazier locked on one-on-one. Now watch, it's pretty good coverage, but he never locates the ball, never comes back. Mills stays with it. Look at Mills, locked on that ball, comes behind Frazier and makes the catch behind his back. Nicely done by P.J. Mills.
And in 2 plays, Oklahoma moves from the 31 to the 17. McGee fires another strike to the same guy. Mills down at the 9-yard line by Bryant Westbrook.
You know, P.J. Mills can be a game breaker. He averages 18 yards every time he touches the football, including a 70-yarder against Syracuse that electrified the entire Oklahoma team. Watch this. This ball's thrown well. Again, Mills goes high. Boy, he's dangerous. You've got to lock him up with those arms. Good tackle after the catch.
Penny and Hall split to the bottom of your screen. The draw to Moore. And Moore runs it into the middle part of the field, down to the 7-yard line, where he's brought down by Storman Norman Watkins.
That'll take us down to the 2-minute area of this game.
A look at Texas's defensive coordinator, Gary Darnell.
Boy, he really shook things up at Texas. He went from the 3-4 defense instead of the old 4-3, but he knows his personnel and he's experienced.
McGee keeps it, and he surges forward over the right side.
He's got the
for the first down. 1:47 to play. And it'll be 1st and goal for Oklahoma.
Several things to consider now if you're Oklahoma. Number 1, you've got to get it in the end zone. Number 2, you want to go for the 2-point conversion because you want to win the game. Forget the tie. Number 3, you don't want to give too much time back to Texas.
We'll see how this scenario plays out. Allen in motion. The give is to the fullback Moore, who maybe got a yard. Clock running with 1:30 to play.
That's all right. Let the clock run if you're an Oklahoma guy. Take your time. You don't want any mistakes down here. No offsides, no movement penalties. You want to execute.
Don't even think about saying that word penalty if you're Oklahoma. Penny and Hall split to the bottom of your screen. Moore the only back. McGee looking into the end zone. Is it picked off? No. Almost. Tyson King almost sealed it for Texas.
And you know what? Allen was wide open for Oklahoma.
That was an ill-advised pass by that man, McGee.
Picks are illegal, but they call this a rub-off. The ball's almost picked off, but look, here are all white shirts.
3rd and goal, Oklahoma, McGee. Brought down at the 3.
They've got to go for it on 4th.
Less than a minute to play. The clock running with 47 seconds to play. Watkins and Brackens made that last tackle, and the Oklahoma coaching staff calling for a timeout. The reverse. One man to beat. Allen, no!
They tried to get all the motion going one way and bring Allen to the backside. But watch 55, Stoney Clark. Here he comes, one-on-one. Bam! The hit, 6'1", 343 pounds. He broke down. He gave him one way to run and made the stop. The biggest play of his life. Stoney Clark. He's an English major. He's writing his own autobiography. He's bigger than Rush Limbaugh. Watch 55, here he comes, bam! Knocks him away from the goal line.
The big man put a lot of giddy up in his gallop and got there in time.
Oh, what a great play.
They'll be taking him out to dinner tonight.
343 pounds and the biggest play of the game.
The eyes of Texas smiling on the Longhorns this Saturday afternoon.
The first and only overtime game between these two schools.
Call tails, it's head. Your choice. You want defense first? Defense first? Which end of the field? Okay. You'll be on offense first. Okay. Again, guys.
So you heard it. The Oklahoma Sooners.
It's two great universities with great traditions in college football. They're two of the winningest programs in the country, have been and probably always will be. And it's played a neutral site in Dallas, Texas, south of the Red River. It's still in Texas, but it's a neutral site, they say. And it's filled full of red and orange every year, and it's split right down the middle. I think that it's a unique venue because it's a state fair of Texas. You got 300,000 or 400,000 people out at the state fair that don't care what's going on in the Cotton Bowl, and you got 75,000 rabid fans that do care what's going on in the Cotton Bowl. And it's one of the greatest games that I've ever been associated or seen as a fan, because the electricity, the excitement, the atmosphere that exists in that stadium is unbelievable. And people tell me that have never been there before, that go for the first time. So it is a unique setting. You have to see it to believe it and experience it. So I know it to be a fact because I've walked down that ramp 25 times, 25 years, and it's something to behold. Well, I've come from different starting points. We used to stay in Fort Worth, and we got smarter and ended up staying in Dallas a little closer. But once you arrive in the neighborhood of the Cotton Bowl, you start seeing all the fans coming toward the stadium. And here again, it's orange and red. It's a sight to behold. It's a sea of orange and red coming to the Cotton Bowl, as you enter the grounds, you drive through through the fairgrounds, the bus coming up to the stadium. It's a mass of seeing red now. And I've told our players, I said, you know, college football is a wonderful experience. And, you know, we all talk about get your game face on and be ready to play. I told our guys, I said, I want you to experience this. I want you to look around, enjoy, see the spectacle. I know you guys are ready to play. When we tee it up and kick off, we're going to play 60 minutes and give great effort. So enjoy what you see, because this is what college football is all about. And I know they took it in because I took it in as a coach and my staff did. So it was something to behold again. And when the bands pull up in front of the ramps and the Texas band goes out and plays the Texas Fight and the Eyes of Texas, let me tell you something. That inspires us as much as inspires their football team. And I'm sure Boomer Sooner, it's a great college football fight song, and I'm sure it affects their team the same way it does us. It gets us ready to play. So it's a neat setting, and it's something I'm glad I was part of and part of that history and tradition. Well, it was wonderful for me because I never understood why they divided the Cotton Bowl the way they did it, because they should have divided it to north to south instead of down the middle, split it one side to the other and swap it every year. What they did is they gave Texas the north end zone and they gave us the south end zone, and the south end zone is where the ramp is. So every time we took the field from the 50-yard line to the 50-yard line, east and west, our team thought we were playing at home because it was always full of red Sooner fans, or white if we're wearing white that day. It was always Sooner fans. And so when we took the field, I know that Texas thought that we were the home team regardless of what jersey they were wearing that day. So it was always an advantage, I thought, for us when we came down the ramp. Well, it's obviously going to be not one I lost. It's going to be one I won. And I think that there are two games really come to mind. Actually, probably three. The first game that I coached, we were fortunate. My first year as head coach in 1973, we beat Texas 52-13. And at that time, it was the most points ever scored on Texas. So we hung half 100 that day. And we like to say in Oklahoma, let's go hang half 100 on someone. And we did that day in my first game with the University of Texas. But two other games really stick out, and there are two ties that I had with Texas. In 1976, we had beaten Texas 5 consecutive years, like Oklahoma has now, the upper hand, and won the last 5. We had won 5 in a row, and we were playing that day and late in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes to go in the ball game. We scored to tie the ball game, 6-6. Texas kicked 2 field goals. I had an extra point kicker who had never missed an extra point in his career. Uwe von Schamann played for Miami Dolphins. And von Schamann never had a chance to kick it because the snap was high and the holder bobbled it, and we never got to hit the field goal, the extra point. So that's a game that I thought we should have won. Another win for Oklahoma, and another loss for Texas. But again, in '84, a similar thing happened. It was a tie ball game, and we were leading the ball game with a minute to go in the game. We recovered a fumble. They didn't give it to us. Then we intercepted a pass in the end zone in a downpour rain situation. Keith Stanberry intercepts the ball, and they don't give that to us. And they line up on the 20-yard line and kick a field goal to tie the ball game with no time left on the clock. So those are 2 victories that escaped the University of Oklahoma that should have been ours. And I look at that and I say that's 2 that got away and that we should have had. Did you ask Darryl that one? You know, it's in 1976, I was the head coach, been the head coach for 3 years. The Dallas papers, I think it was that week, that came out with the spy incident that happened in '72 when I was an assistant coach. Obviously, I did not know the spy incident happened until it happened. It was after the fact that I knew about it. I was the head coach at that time when it was released publicly, so I was the defendant of my coaching staff. I said it never happened under my regime. A lot of people thought it was a current situation, and it wasn't. It was 4 years earlier that this actually happened. And it did happen. There's no question about it. It did happen, and I'll admit that. But it didn't happen while I was head coach, because I told our staff, because I knew that it happened, don't do this. And And as far as I know, it never happened when I was head coach. But walking down that ramp that day, with all the publicity and all what was going on in the papers that week, when Coach Royal came out of his locker room to meet the president, Gerald Ford, and I came out of my locker room, I know the President Ford has got to be, what's going on here? These guys are really ready to play, because we never shook hands, we never spoke to each other, we just spoke to the president, and we walked down the ramp. No one said a word. The president's trying to make small talk. No one say anything, and we walk out on the ramp, and that's where I've always said I thank God that the south end zone is all Sooners, because some redneck from Oklahoma stood up and says, "Who are those two blankety blanks with Switzer?" And of course, everybody in the stadium in that south end zone started laughing. It was a tremendous roar, and it was embarrassing. I'm telling you, I really felt about this small for that to happen for Coach Royal and for the president. But no one said any comment, and everyone heard what was shouted out for some Oklahoma redneck wearing red, and thank God that it wasn't someone wearing orange, because they would have done the same thing. Well, there's no question. Coach Royal had great football teams. He was always in contention for the national championship when he coached at Texas, and I always looked at our program in this light. And I told our team and our coaching staff, I said, if we're good enough to beat the University of Texas, that's our gauge and our measuring stick. If we can play with them and defeat them, we have an opportunity to win the Big Eight, and at the end of the season, play Nebraska, who's always going to be good. And we know Nebraska is comparable to anything that we could produce and Texas could produce. So if we beat Texas, we were on the path to a collision for the Big Eight Conference Championship and to play in the Orange Bowl. And the Orange Bowl always provided a team for the Big Eight champion that was the best in college football, had the best record in college football, and that's why the Orange Bowl has had more national championship games than any other venue. So that was that important to us, because we had to win that if we were to arrive at an opportunity to play for the national championship. A tremendous pressure, because Coach Wilkinson, what he accomplished at the University of Oklahoma was what everyone in coaching, assistant coaches, head coach, would look at and marvel at what he achieved. At one time, his record was 100 wins and only 4 losses. His run in the 50s was phenomenal. And then at the end of his career, when he left here, he had 147 wins, 29 losses, and 4 ties. It was the best record in college football at that time, and other than the best modern day record in college football. You know, Rockne and Leahy had a better winning percentage, but won more games and was third in winning percentage. But what happens is that he leaves OU to run for political office, and he's only 47 years of age. That's what people, it's phenomenal that he accomplished so much in a short period of time, and he was so young. He had so much left to give to the game, but he made a decision, a career change, and went somewhere else. But he created a monster here. He created a monster for everyone to follow. And I said that it was my job, and everyone after him, it was to feed that monster. And we had to feed it well. You didn't stay here very long. So it was a great challenge, and we were up to it, and we were able to do it. Now it's Bob Stoops' job, and Bob's up to it, and he's doing it very well now himself.
You touched on it right now a little bit, but that's one of the things that marks.
It's the talent level. I think it swings, the pendulum swings, because of, to win this game and to win consistently and contend for national championships, you have to recruit consistently well every year, year after year after year, to be able, and when another school has a great product, a great tradition to sell, and they're going to recruit well year after year after year, there's not much that separates them. And it comes down to maybe 1 or 2 positions of skilled players, and especially at quarterback, that swing the pendulum. But there'll not be much disparity in the talent levels of both these institutions. Well, first of all, Darrell and his coaches and his players, when they went to the Wishbone in 1968, we were obviously playing them every year, and I'm looking at every film and every game they play as an offensive coordinator, and our defensive staff is looking at them because they're having to defend the Wishbone. And we recognized immediately why they were having track meets, and they were hanging half 100 on everybody every Saturday afternoon. And we made a decision early on. We were smart enough to say they got the best gimmick going right now. They know what they're doing to defenses, and no one knows what to do right now. So we were fortunate to change to that offense, and if we hadn't, I'd never been the head coach at the University of Oklahoma, because we would have all been probably fired. I don't know if we would have survived in 1970. But it's something that did happen, and it was two of the great offenses of that era. Then Alabama, Coach Bryant was smart enough to recognize what we were doing, and he went to it. So we were the three premier wishbone schools in the country, and Alabama and Oklahoma were the only teams of the decade of the 70s, won over 100 games that decade, and both were running the wishbone offense, and Texas stayed with it till Akers came, and Earl Campbell's dotted I in '77 won the Heisman. Well, certainly we did, and let me tell you, in regard to the hitting, I'll never forget an incident that happened in our locker room. We hired a coach from Houston, Texas. Wendell Mosley was Greg Pruitt's coach in high school. He was a great running back here. He came to the University of Oklahoma as a running back coach, and he had never played in this game, and we were hanging half 100 on everybody prior to the Texas game. That was all he knew, was that seeing us burn up the carpet out there and leave it scorched on Saturday afternoons. We told him what to expect when we went down to the Cotton Bowl, and he didn't believe us. We came at the half of the 1974, I can't remember what year it was, and he was laying up in the corner, sweating profusely, laying on the floor with a Coke and a wild-eyed look on his face. And I said, "What's wrong, Wendell? You having a heart attack?" He says, "No, coaches, they sound like Mack trucks running together out there." I said, "I told you that's what it's like down here when these two teams get together." Well, I think both Mack Brown and Bob Stoops have done an outstanding job for both programs. I know Mack gets a lot of criticism because of how the pendulum swung to the Oklahoma in the win side. But as we mentioned earlier, this game kind of goes in streaks sometimes, and I know Bob's going to try to keep it from going that way. But it'll always come down to, as we talked earlier, about the talent level and the turnover in the talent level and the skill at certain positions. But Mack has risen that program. There's no question about it. He's done an outstanding job. The only thing he hasn't done is beat Oklahoma. And if he does that, then his stock will increase from what it is. And yet it is pretty high right now. Bob Stoops has done the outstanding job of any coach, most outstanding job of any coach in college football. He came into a program that through the decade of the 90s struggled. He's brought it back to the prominence that it once enjoyed and should enjoy because of the great stature and tradition it holds. And he did that because of the outstanding confidence he exudes, his personality, the way he approaches the coaching of his team. It's something to behold, and it's not only what he exudes is now permeated not throughout the state, but it goes beyond our borders. People throughout the country recognize what he's accomplished at Oklahoma, and it's going to be great to watch him in the next several years try to continue to do this. It's a tough job. He's put himself in a tough position because he has accomplished so much so fast, and that happened to me, and it's happened to him. And the tough part is to continue it, and the challenge there, and I'm sure that he's willing to accept it and handle it. Oh my gosh, that doesn't compare. You know, I spent nearly 40 years in the college game. I was professional football 4 years. They're two different games, and I'm not talking about what's played on the field. They both have 11 players and playing the game the same way. It's just they're more skilled in professional football. College football coaches have a different mission goal in life. You're taking young men for the next 4 or 5 years, 365, 24/7. It's a different goal and mission. You're trying to make them productive citizens the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years of living. Professional football is they're here with you today and gone tomorrow. They might be on the waiver wire. It's big business. You go there at 7 in the morning, you leave at 6:30 in the afternoon, and you're trying to get to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is the greatest stage in football. There's no question about it. It's the biggest sports venue, one-day venue there is in any sport. And I was glad I was a part of it. I'm glad that we were able to win it. But it doesn't compare with the college game and what the college game is all about. You know, first of all, I can say this, is that if you look at a pro stadium, one great thing you can say about college venues, the people that sit in the college stadium are students and graduates of that school. Well, Oklahoma's had some great athletes. There's no question at all positions, offensively, defensively. We've had, when you recruit outstanding talent, you surround them with good talent, good players at all positions. Then people like the ones you mentioned, Billy Sims, Joe Washington, Greg Pruitt, Adrian Peterson, those guys have an opportunity to be better than what they have been in the past, because when you surround yourself with good talent, good things are going to happen for individual players, and they'll be recognized for that. And they all had the talent and ability, or they wouldn't have been recruited. But when you put a supporting cast around them that allow them to extend their talents and allow them to be on stage, it's all because of team effort. And they're all excellent players. But I think if they could have gone other places, that they would maybe just been, you know, also Rands. Well, I go and enjoy the game as I always have. Some years I go, some years I don't, depending on what my schedule is. But I go with family, I go with friends. I like to sit and watch the game and not be disrupted by what goes on around you. I really do like to look at how teams play each other. I like to see when a offensive team breaks the huddle, how we line up in the secondary and what adjustments we make to deployment, movement, and analyze the game as it's played. And that's because you spend 40, 50 years in coaching and playing the game and coaching, that's how we approach the game. But we're not there as fans to look around and enjoy the game. And most times I can do and sit at home and probably enjoy it better because no one distracts you.
Won the toss, and they will play defense first. Right now, Texas will have the first possession on offense in overtime. Oklahoma winning the toss, electing to go on defense. The ball is on the 25-yard line. Texas with the wind at its back. Williams and Holmes behind the quarterback, James Brown. The back's in the offset eye. Brown, incomplete.
You know, that's the question I wondered. Would John McAvick go for the knockout punch right away?
Second down and 10. Ricky Williams spinning outside and brought down by the shoestrings by number 51, Broderick Simpson, who in the end of the regulation period made a key play to bat a ball down.
From Mike Adams, that's right, across the middle. Broderick Simpson having himself a great fourth quarter in overtime. Number 51 right here, Ricky Williams is going to break it outside. It's hard to bring him down, but right there he's got some open field in front of him, and Broderick Simpson makes a great play. Now this, you know, if Texas doesn't get any more yards, it's going to be a long field goal for Phil Dawson.
Backs out of the eye. Williams and Holmes. Adams is in the slot left. Holmes in motion. They've got to get to the 15. Brown is on the run. Lays it up into the end zone. Through the arms of his intended receiver, Holmes.
Holmes might have been the most surprised person on the football field that ball got through Terrence Malone's hands and actually wound up in his. He had an opportunity to catch that pass. You know, when the ball was up in the air, I thought, if there's an interception here, Oklahoma can simply win with a field goal in their possession in overtime. You don't want to turn the football over in overtime. But watch this, Malone goes up, it goes right over him and right into Priest Holmes' hands.
He might have been a little surprised it got through. Now,
I don't think he saw the ball till the end, though.
John from 43 yards out, Phil Dawson. He's made one today from 47. He's missed one from 43. He is a big-time kicker. Last year he beat Virginia at the wire. And here it comes.
Ooh.
No problem for Phil Dawson.
Ice in his veins on that one.
So Texas takes a 3-point lead, but hold on. Oklahoma has an opportunity to equal or better. Oklahoma's turn now. 1st and 10. James Allen gets to the corner. Allen appears to have the first down near the 15. James Allen had a 49-yard run called back because of a hold that might have given Oklahoma the win in regulation moments ago.
They went right back to the same play, running over their left side of their offensive line, running to the right side of the Texas defense, and if that ball is past the 15-yard line, which it is a first down.
A look at the defensive coordinator.
So now they're in great field goal range, and now they can try and get the football in the end zone.
Gary Darnell, the defensive coordinator for Texas, John, facing a lot of heat. 1st and 10, and Oklahoma is in Texas's end of the stadium. Allen, off tackle to the right side of the line, down to the 13. Hampton making the tackle, and as I mentioned moments ago, as you look at the stadium, Oklahoma on offense in Texas's end of the stadium. It is split right down the middle.
Yeah, it sure is right here. This is Texas side, this is Oklahoma side. Right now, here's where all the action is. And there are a lot of empty seats in the house because everybody's standing. Man, everybody is just standing, enjoying this football game, and wondering if the Sooners are going to get the touchdown or try a field goal attempt. You know, they can just keep running the football and try to get the football in the end zone that way. They really don't have to risk anything with a pass play. But again, that puts the pressure on their kicker. He's 3 for 3 so far today. Jeremy Alexandres.
Phil Dawson, meanwhile, making a field goal moments ago from 43 yards out. He is 2 of 3 today. Burnt orange and white, crimson and cream on one side. Allen down to the 9-yard line, brought down by Mosier. Number 95, who came back into the game after being hurt earlier.
Keep in mind now, the ball's on the right hash. They've had success running left, and you don't want to get the place kicker in a tough angle when you get down this far in the football field. So a lot of things at work here with John Blake, Dick Winder, and they may call a timeout. You know, they get a timeout, so they may consider what they want to do in terms of field position and where the ball is on the football field by talking it over with their coaches.
They've got to get to the 3-yard line. I'll call it the 2.5-yard line for the first down. Fuente, Allen, nice move. He's got the first. James Allen with a little Sooner magic. No flags on the play, and James Allen looked back and said, that one stands.
Chris Carter, 16, is in coverage one-on-one with Allen. Allen will go out here. They're 16 in coverage, and he misses the tackle. This has plagued the Texas defense all year long against Virginia, against Notre Dame. Allen makes him whiff with a good move inside, takes it upfield and gets the first down. And now Oklahoma can win this football game outright.
1st and goal. Full house backfield. The toss to James Allen. Cuts it inside. Touchdown Sooners. The Sooners win.
Jason White, having replaced Nate Hibble, would have a 4th and 2 in the second quarter.
There's the look and the pitch, and Griffin goes for it. Inside the 15. Alvin Brooks there to get him out of bounds, and there is that same look that Stoops used with Heupel, and it's good for 17 yards.
Nice little changeup. You're getting the guy in motion, someone chases him, and then come down outnumbered right here and run an easy option. A 5-flat quarterback could run this one, pitch it out, and that's the first time Quentin Griffin has gotten any space in the last 2 games I've watched.
Now White lines up back in the shotgun on a 1st down from the 13. Takes the inside handoff right for the end zone, just short of it.
Well, there's the added dimension that a running quarterback can bring to this offense. At least I thought all week, Brent, that Oklahoma would have a wrinkle for this game. Here is the wrinkle for this game. Much like Clemson does with Woody Dantzler, Northwestern does with Zach Kustak, Oklahoma now has added this quarterback keeper in their offense. That'll get some type of a running game in this set.
Here's 1st and goal. Option look again to Griffin. Touchdown! Oklahoma! The story of a backup quarterback. Jason White off the Sooner bench. 3 option looks. Twice the number 22. This one for the touchdown as the injured Nate Hibble watches from the sideline as his Sooners strike first. Duncan makes it a 7-0 Oklahoma lead.
The changeup has been that Oklahoma has found another weapon. Nate Hibble made a courageous throw to get the 1st down, but he got hurt again. Now, and you have to admire, Brent, a guy who stays ready. That's the sign of great coaching. When a backup player comes in, no drop-off in talent, and they keep moving.
Still in the second, Texas would drive to Oklahoma's 11-yard line.
Here's the draw play, and Ike was tripped up by Rocky Kalmus at the 14-yard line, and he stumbled into the hole, and there's the first timeout used this half by the Longhorns.
Sims likes to go to his tight end. This is a perfect time down in the middle of down in the scoring zone where Texas is so good.
So Mike Stoops slots back off the field. Done a fabulous job. I'm sure he reminded them that number 80, Scaife, is a huge target for Sims. 29 seconds remaining. Running back is out into the pattern. Sims has to throw it away. Lehman doing a great job on the fullback that time. Trissel was the safety valve, and Lehman would not frame.
Well, Teddy Lehman is one of the fastest players on the football field. Matched up with Kalmus at linebacker. They don't even ever have to substitute for those 2 guys. Scaife went down in the end zone, but Oklahoma was ready for him that time.
Sloan Thomas out far to the right. Roy Williams matched against Strait. Size advantage Williams. Here's your 3rd down play for the Horns. Hey, look at Williams. Throws it incomplete. 4th down with Derek Strait in that matchup.
Strait did a nice job that time reading Chris Sims' eyes because there was a blitz to the opposite side of the field. Chris had nothing to do but go to Roy Williams on this. Couldn't get the fade. You see Strait looking at the quarterback, reads the throw and cuts across, and actually the ball was thrown the only place it could have been thrown. Good defensive call that time from Oklahoma and Stoops.
Mangum had 1 field goal already blocked today. This one from 27 to put the Horns on the board at the end of the half. And he does.
The two defenses would pitch shutouts until late in the fourth quarter.
Do you pooch punt it and play field position at the 2-minute mark? There's Duncan. Missed a 42 and a 24-yarder in 6 of his last 7.
And this would be, what, about 45, 44 yards? They're going to pooch it, aren't they? No, they're going to try to kick it.
Now the quarterback, Jason White, remembers the holder. If a direct snap, they could pooch it. Instead, they could go for the 45-yarder. There it is, the pooch punt. Off the lateral from White. Inside the 5-yard line. What did he do? What was Vasher doing? It was headed for the end zone. Oh, my.
We said maybe someone will make a big mistake. Is that the big mistake? Still plenty of time left. 2:06, Texas has their timeouts left, all 3 of them.
Chris Sims, 97 yards away. Timeout. Chris Sims and the Longhorns with a first down in the 3 after a mental mistake by Vasher. Ball would have gone into the end zone, and they could have had it on the 20. Cannot afford a mistake down here. They got 2:06 to work with. Longhorns with their timeouts left. Lehman showing blitz. There's the blitz. Touchdown, Lehman. Touchdown, Oklahoma. Williams got him on the blitz. Lehman on the pick. OU is going to win it again.
Lehman bluffs. Williams gets the play. Sims backs up. Roy Williams just lays out right over the blocker. Remember the last time he was blocked? This time Lehman shows blitz and falls off for the freebie. What a play. What a play by Roy Williams.
What an effort by Williams. Duncan. The extra point. Take a look at number 38. Why he's the premier safety in the land. Over the top of the blitz protector. It flutters, and Lehman strolls in. OU rolling again. Do these guys ever lose a big game? Not today. No rest for number 38, Roy Williams, back out on the kickoff team as his great effort off the blitz over the top forces the 3rd interception of the day by Chris Sims, and Lehman picks it off, and now he too will come down the field as the Sooners fire their best guns. Here's Vasher, who made that mistake, trying to get back for it, and he is down at the 31-yard line.
Well, someone always makes a mistake. This time it was Brett Robbins. Remember when he got Williams before with the low block? This time he goes up and cuts. You cannot cut a linebacker. When you cut a linebacker or a safety, and he knows you're going to do it. Remember, he did it last time. That allows him to go over the top. Sims takes a short drop. I don't know if that was an interception or a fumble. He got that ball, I thought, before he threw it that time.
I want that on the cover of one of those magazines. What an effort by Roy Williams. First down. Here's Chris. Middle intercepted. Williams. There he is again. Oh, baby.
I remember a little earlier, Mike Stoops yelling at Roy Williams for lining up wrong. This time, he lined up right. He forces the turnover, and now he gets the turnover. The All-American in a big game. That was a gimme that time. Takes it, but he was in the perfect spot.
Oklahoma has again proved its value.
Well, I think it's because most of the
young men that are involved with that, young men and women really, because the alumni and so forth that are either involved in the University of Texas or the state of Texas or Oklahoma or the state of Oklahoma. You know, there's just something when you cross the Red River and you're going or leaving one state going into the other and you're from one or the other, there's just a sense of pride. And the fact that it's kind of a natural rivalry. You know, you got your next door neighbor and when it comes to competing, whether it be football or whether it be any thing, you know, naturally you'd like to win, and it had just built through the years. But I just think it's the rivalry, the pride that each members of each team and student body and alumni have, and the fact that the traditional rivalry where, you know, there's been some years that Oklahoma's dominated things, and like right now, for instance, they've been dominated for a few years, and there's been some years where Texas has dominated it. But when you think of rivalries in sports, and particularly in football, I think that's the great thing about it, and that's what you have in the Texas OU situation, is just a tremendous rivalry. Well, that's, you know, there again, you're talking about tradition. And from day one, I'm sure when young men decide to go to play at OU, that one thing they'll hear real quick is the OU Texas tradition and all the things that go along with it. And one of them is really coming out of that tunnel, coming from the locker rooms, and you enter the arena, enter that Cotton Bowl. And half of it is divided into different colors. But the excitement, it's you just have to experience it. I mean, I get goosebumps just talking about it in a situation like this. You can just imagine the day of the game, but that's all part of it. It's a great motivator. It's a great reason probably to go to one school than the other. Texas and Oklahoma both have a lot of traditions. And not just that tradition, they have a lot of traditions, and that's one of the reasons I'm sure a young man chooses to go play at one school or the other. And part of that whole thing is the Texas OU rivalry. Well, I can remember it. I mean, it was everything that, again, players that were on that team back when I was being recruited by both schools. You know, I was told how special that game truly was, and you know, there's certainly, if anything, it was undersold to me because again, you have to experience that. People that in your life, football has been very important to me, and because of that, Texas OU experience was something very special. Well, again, I was so young, and I don't know if I really appreciated it like I really should have. You know, and you go back and you look at two of the game's best. You're talking about legends in college football. They both have records. And I think the greatest thing about both of those men are the men that their programs, the quality of young men that have come out of their programs, or at that time did come out of their programs. And of course, Darrell Royal is a good example for Coach Bud Wilkinson and his program. But there are so many. You go back and look at the successful things that their former players have been able, to achieve. And I'm not just talking about in football. I'm talking about in business and in life. And there's a lot of quality there. And I think that's more than just being good football coaches. They both were men of character, and certainly this is shown by the quality of men that have come out of the universities that participated in their programs. Well, of course, that was a big one. When you're making a run like that, regardless of who you're playing, a ranked team or unranked team, you know that on that given Saturday they can certainly step up and punch you right in the mouth and make a loser out of you real quick if you're not ready. And but No, being my sophomore year, and we didn't play as freshmen back then, didn't play on the varsity as freshmen. So that was my first taste of it. And of course, you know, I remember sitting in the stands my freshman year, which I went to that game and sat in the stands and got a taste of the fans and everything else. And I witnessed how special it was. And I saw, you know, I rode in riding the bus to the game, knowing just how, you know, what was being said by the seniors, and again, how special that game was. In 1963, you know, it just, to me, it was you know, it was probably the highlight of my whole college career, being in that game, being that we did win and we beat a real good football team, and in the end of that season, for seeing just how important that game was to us in that successful year that we had. But basically, that's where we were being challenged by a good football team. We won, and the momentum really went our way, and it went on from there. But I wasn't disappointed in all the things that the upperclassmen were telling me about what was going to happen when you got into that arena and when you saw what you saw. And I remember those Oklahoma guys. It seems like that Oklahoma was one of the first teams that really got into lifting weights. And I remember they had that guy Joe Don Looney. He had, I mean, it looked like his arm was about as big as my leg. Physically, they were a little bit better looking in their uniforms than we were, and it was because the strength training program, they were a little ahead of us. And it was a little intimidating. You know, you said, am I going to be able to go up against this stud, you know, or these studs? Because they had them, and there was some just physically looking at that team could be intimidating. But we knew we had prepared. But there, you know, I guess that was that 1963, looking at Oklahoma and the size of them, and knowing a lot of their players and their upperclassmen. You know, they had some guys who were All-Americans. They had some great football players. And then you put all that tradition and the importance of that game together with all that. You know, here you are, a sophomore, you know, going through it the first time. You can imagine you're flying about like that, and you just hope that, you know, you do things right, you carry out your assignments, you prepared well, and I think that's one thing that the good coaching staff, such as we had at the University of Texas and still have at the University of Texas, preparation certainly is a big part of it, and we were well prepared for that game and won it, and won.
The series is.
You know, for so many years, Oklahoma has really depended on getting X number of players out of the state of Texas, and they've gotten some good players out of the state of Texas. And my senior year in high school, I was very fortunate. Our high school team got into the playoffs, and I had a pretty good playoff run, and that attracted the attention of the Texas and Oklahoma. I don't think before that playoff run, both of those schools would have been knocking at my door, but I got an invite up to Oklahoma, and I tell you, the rivalry, again, I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, and I am a Texan. And so I went up to, and I think the big reason, I know the big reason I went to OU is certainly I knew about their tradition and winning and the fine program, but their head coach, Bud Wilkinson, I at that time was thinking about, hey, this may be something I want to do as coach. And I knew his record, and I knew that he had put out people like Coach Darrell Royal, and so there naturally was some interest in it. Well, I was not in Oklahoma probably 2 or 3 hours before I knew I wanted to get out of there. You know, you walk through the dorms on campus, and you know, you're there, you're visiting, and these are athletic dorms, and a lot of the players and stuff. And I started hearing some comments about my home state. And of course, you're hearing a lot of them about the Longhorns, but when they started talking about the state of Texas, I said, what in the heck am I doing here? You know, I need to get my butt back across that Red River. Whether I'm going to Texas or I'm not coming to Oklahoma. But no, it was just, I don't know how a true Texan can do what a lot of true Texans do, and that's go to school in Oklahoma. But it really hit home to me because I felt it, and even though there was a coach there that I thought a lot of, and there's, you know, the tradition and program, and certainly admired that, and there was a lot of things about it that I liked. But we had something just as good and just as great right in Austin, Texas. And so I got out of there. I was supposed to stay a couple of days, and I ended up staying just over a day, and I said I wanted to go home. And in fact, I did not even get to talk to the head coach that particular trip because he wasn't coming back in. But, you know, which again, that was important to me to just meet him and whatever, but I just didn't like what I heard and saw when I was there. And that was a motivator. I mean, really, I came to university, and it was a part of the motivation that when we played those guys, I knew what they were saying about the Longhorns and about our state, and it stuck with me. I have not been back to the Cotton Bowl, and I still work for the Atlanta Falcons football team there in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm lucky if I get to see 1 or 2 games live a year, and I try to get back to Austin because I love Austin and love the people of Austin, and of course the university. Very important to me. But no, I do watch it. I mean, I'm not going to miss it. It's on television, and do watch it, and you know, I reminisce, and I'm getting old enough now that my memory's getting so bad. I probably don't reminisce as good as I used to, but no, it's still important. I mean, I know how important, I know that team, those 2 teams probably both had a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions about that game. I know we got together, Coach Rawls started something with us that we'd get together on a special day or a special night. He'd let the team get together and kind of make a commitment that we were all going to give our best to win that football game, that one game. And not every game did we do that, so it was special. And I know Oklahoma probably did the same thing.
It's 2 great universities with great traditions in college football. They're 2 of the winningest programs in the country, have been, and probably always will be. And it's played a neutral site in Dallas, Texas, south of the Red River. It's still in Texas, but it's a neutral site, they say. And it's filled full of red and orange every year, and it's split right down the middle. I think that it's a unique venue because it's a state fair of Texas. You got 300,000 or 400,000 people out at the state fair that don't care what's going on in the Cotton Bowl, and you got 75,000 rabid fans that do care what's going on in the Cotton Bowl. And it's one of the greatest games that I've ever been associated or seen as a fan, because the electricity, the excitement, the atmosphere that exists in that stadium is unbelievable. And people tell me that have never been there before, that go for the first time. So it is a unique setting. You have to see it to believe it and experience it. So I know it to be a fact because I've walked down that ramp 25 times, 25 years, and it's something to behold. Well, I've come from different starting points. We used to stay in Fort Worth when we got smarter and ended up staying in Dallas a little closer. But once you arrive in the neighborhood of the Cotton Bowl, you start seeing all the fans coming toward the stadium. And here again, it's orange and red. It's a sight to behold. It's a sea of orange and red coming to the Cotton Bowl. And as you enter the grounds, you drive through through the fairgrounds, the bus coming up to the stadium. It's a mass of sea and red now. And I've told our players, I said, you know, college football is a wonderful experience, and you know, we all talk about get your game face on and be ready to play. I told our guys, I said, I want you to experience this. I want you to look around, enjoy, see the spectacle. I know you guys are ready to play. When we tee it up and kick off, we're going to play 60 minutes and give great effort. So enjoy what you see, because this is what college football is all about. And I know they took it in because I took it in as a coach, and my staff did. So it was something to behold again. And when the bands pull up in front of the ramps and the Texas band goes out and plays the Texas Fight and the Eyes of Texas, let me tell you something. That inspires us as much as inspires their football team. And I'm sure Boomer Sooner, it's a great college football fight song, and I'm sure it affects their team the same way it does us. It gets us ready to play. So it's a neat setting, and it's something I'm glad I was part of and part of that history and tradition. Well, it was wonderful for me because I never understood why they divided the Cotton Bowl the way they did it, because they should have divided it to north to south instead of down the middle, split it one side to the other and swap it every year. What they did is they gave Texas the north end zone and they gave us the south end zone, and the south end zone is where the ramp is. So every time we took the field from the 50-yard line to the 50-yard line, east and west, our team thought we were playing at home because it was always full of red Sooner fans, or white if we're wearing white that day. It was always Sooner fans. And so when we took the field, I know that Texas thought that we were the home team regardless of what jersey they were wearing that day. So it was always an advantage, I thought, for us when we came down the ramp. Well, it's obviously going to be not one I lost. It's going to be one I won. And I think that there are two games really come to mind. Actually, probably three. The first game that I coached, we were fortunate. My first year as head coach in 1973, we beat Texas 52-13. And at that time, it was the most points ever scored on Texas. So we hung half 100 that day. And we like to say in Oklahoma, let's go hang half 100 on someone. And we did that day in my first game with the University of Texas. But two other games really stick out, and there are two ties that I had with Texas. In 1976, we had beaten Texas 5 consecutive years, like Oklahoma has now, the upper hand, and won the last 5. We had won 5 in a row, and we were playing that day and late in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes to go in the ball game. We scored to tie the ball game, 6-6. Texas kicked 2 field goals. I had an extra point kicker who had never missed an extra point in his career. Uwe von Schamann played for Miami Dolphins. And von Schamann never had a chance to kick it because the snap was high and the holder bobbled it, and we never got to hit the field goal, the extra point. So that's a game that I thought we should have won. Another win for for Oklahoma, and another loss for Texas. But again, in '84, a similar thing happened. It was a tie ball game, and we were leading the ball game with a minute to go in the game. We recovered a fumble. They didn't give it to us. Then we intercepted a pass in the end zone in a downpour rain situation. Keith Stansberry intercepts the ball, and they don't give that to us. And they line up on the 20-yard line and kick a field goal to tie the ball game with no time left on the clock. So those are 2 victories that escaped the University of Oklahoma that should have been ours. And I look at that and I say that's 2 that got away and that we should have had. Did you ask Darryl that one? It's in 1976, I was the head coach, been the head coach for 3 years. The Dallas papers, I think it was that week, that came out with the spy incident that happened in '72 when I was an assistant coach. Obviously, I did not know the spy incident happened until it happened. It was after the fact that I knew about it. I was the head coach at that time when it was released publicly, so I was the defendant of my coaching staff. I said it never happened under my regime. A lot of people thought it was a current situation, and it wasn't. It was 4 years earlier that this actually happened. And it did happen. There's no question about it. It did happen, and I'll admit that. But it didn't happen while I was head coach because I told our staff, because I knew that it happened, don't do this. And as far as I know, it never happened when I was head coach. But walking down that ramp that day, with all the publicity and all what was going on in the papers that week, when Coach Royal came out of his locker room to meet the president, Gerald Ford, and I came out of my locker room, I know the President Ford has got to be, what's going on here? These guys are really ready to play, because we never shook hands. We never spoke to each other. We just spoke to the president, and we walked down the ramp. No one said a word. The president's trying to make small talk. No one saying anything. And we walk out on the ramp, and that's where I've always said I thank God that the south end zone is all Sooners, because some redneck from Oklahoma stood up and says, "Who are those 2 blankety blanks with Switzer?" And of course, everybody in the stadium in that south end zone started laughing. It was a tremendous roar, and it was embarrassing. I'm telling you, I really felt about this small for that to happen for Coach Royal and for the president. But no one said any comment, and everyone heard what was shouted out for some Oklahoma redneck wearing red, and thank God that it wasn't someone wearing orange, because they would have done the same thing. Well, there's no question. Coach Royal had great football teams. He was always in contention for the national championship when he coached at Texas, and I always looked at our program in this light. And I told our team and our coaching staff, I said, if we're good enough to beat the University of Texas, that's our gauge and our measuring stick. If we can play with them and defeat them, we have an opportunity to win the Big Eight, and at the end of the season, play Nebraska, who's always going to be good. And we know Nebraska is comparable to anything that we could produce and Texas could produce. So if we beat Texas, we were on the path to a collision for the Big Eight Conference Championship and to play in the Orange Bowl. And the Orange Bowl always provided a team for the Big Eight champion that was the best in college football, had the best record in college football, and that's why the Orange Bowl has had more national championship games than any other venue. So that was that important to us because we had to win that if we were to arrive at an opportunity to play for the national championship. A tremendous pressure because Coach Wilkinson, what he accomplished at the University of Oklahoma was what everyone in coaching, assistant coaches, head coach would look at and marvel at what he achieved. At one time, his record was 100 wins and only 4 losses. His run in the 50s was phenomenal. And then at the end of his career, when he left here, he had 147 wins, 29 losses, and 4 ties. It was the best record in college football at that time, and other than the best modern day record in college football. You know, Rockne and Leahy had a better winning percentage, but won more games and was third in winning percentage. But what happens is that he leaves OU to run for political office, and he's only 47 years of age. That's what people, it's phenomenal that he accomplished so much in a short period of time, and he was so young. He had so much left to give to the game, but he made a decision, a career change, and went somewhere else. But he created a monster here. He created a monster for everyone to follow. And I said that it was my job and everyone after him, it was to feed that monster. And we had to feed it well. You didn't stay here very long. So it was a great challenge, and we were up to it, and we were able to do it. Now it's Bob Stoops' job, and Bob's up to it, and he's doing it very well now himself.
You touched on it right now a little bit, but that's one of the things that marks.
It's the talent level. I think it swings, the pendulum swings because of, to win this game and to win consistently and contend for national championships, you have to recruit consistently well every year, year after year after year, to be able, and when another school has a great product, a great tradition to sell, and they're going to recruit well year after year after year, there's not much that separates them. And it comes down to maybe 1 or 2 positions of skilled players, and especially at quarterback, that swing the pendulum. But there'll not be much disparity in the talent levels of both these institutions. Well, first of all, Darrell and his coaches and his players, when they went to the Wishbone in 1968, we were obviously playing them every year, and I'm looking at every film, every game they play as an offensive coordinator, and our defensive staff is looking at them because they're having to defend the Wishbone. And we recognized immediately why they were having track meets, and they were hanging half 100 on everybody every Saturday afternoon. And we made a decision early on. We were smart enough to say they got the best gimmick going right now. They know what they're doing to defenses, and no one knows what to do right now. So we were fortunate to change to that offense, and if we hadn't, I'd never been the head coach at the University of Oklahoma because we would have all been probably fired. I don't know if we would have survived in 1970. But it's something that did happen, and it was 2 of the great offenses of that era. Then Alabama, Coach Bryant was smart enough to recognize what we were doing, and he went to it. So we were the 3 premier Wishbone schools in the country, and Alabama and Oklahoma were the only teams of the decade of the 70s won over 100 games that decade, and both were running the Wishbone offense, and Texas stayed with it till Akers came, and Earl Campbell's dotted I in '77 won the Heisman. Well, certainly we did, and let me tell you, in regard to the hitting, I'll never forget an incident that happened in our locker room. We hired a coach from Houston, Texas, Wendell Mosley was Greg Pruitt's coach in high school. He was a great running back here. He came to the University of Oklahoma as a running back coach, and he had never played in this game, and we were hanging half 100 on everybody prior to the Texas game. That was all he knew, was that seeing us burn up the carpet out there and leave it scorched on Saturday afternoons. We told him what to expect when we went down to the Cotton Bowl, and he didn't believe us. We came at the half of the 1974, I can't remember what year it was, and he was laying up in the corner, sweating profusely, laying on the floor with a Coke and a wild-eyed look on his face. And I said, "What's wrong, Wendell? You having a heart attack?" He says, "No, coaches, they sound like Mack trucks running together out there." I said, "I told you that's what it's like down here when these two teams get together." Well, I think both Mack Brown and Bob Stoops have done an outstanding job for both programs. I know Mack gets a lot of criticism because of how the pendulum swung to the Oklahoma in the win side. But as we mentioned earlier, this game kind of goes in streaks sometimes, and I know Bob's going to try to keep it from going that way. But it'll always come down to, as we talked earlier, about the talent level and the turnover and the talent level and the skill at certain positions. But Mack has risen that program. There's no question about it. He's done an outstanding job. The only thing he hasn't done is beat Oklahoma. And if he does that, then his stock will increase from what it is. And yet it is pretty high right now. Bob Stoops has done the outstanding job of any coach, most outstanding job of any coach in college football. He came into a program that through the decade of the 90s struggled. He's brought it back to the prominence that it once enjoyed and should enjoy because of the great stature and tradition it holds. And he did that because of the outstanding confidence he exudes, his personality, the way he approaches the coaching of his team. It's something to behold, and it's not only what he exudes is now permeated not throughout the state, but it goes beyond our borders. People throughout the country recognize what he's accomplished at Oklahoma, and it's going to be great to watch him in the next several years try to continue to do this. It's a tough job. He's put himself in a tough position because he has accomplished so much so fast, and that happened to me, and it's happened to him. And the tough part is to continue it, and the challenge there, and I'm sure that he's willing to accept it and handle it. Oh my gosh, that doesn't compare. You know, I spent nearly 40 years in the college game. I was professional football 4 years. They're two different games, and I'm not talking about what's played on the field. They both have 11 players and playing the game the same way. It's just they're more skilled in professional football. College football, coaches have a different mission goal in life. You're taking young men for the next 4 or 5 years, 365, 24/7. It's a different goal and mission. You're trying to make them productive citizens the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years of living. Professional football is they're here with you today and gone tomorrow. They might be on the waiver wire. It's big business. You go there at 7 in the morning, you leave at 6:30 in the afternoon, and you're trying to get to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is the greatest stage in football. There's no question about it. It's the biggest sports venue, one-day venue there is in any sport, and I was glad I was a part of it. I'm glad that we were able to win it, but it doesn't compare with the college game and what the college game is all about. You know, first of all, I can say this: if you look at a pro stadium, one great thing you can say about college venues: the people that sit in the college stadium are students and graduates of that school. Well, Oklahoma has had some great athletes. There's no question at all positions, offensively, defensively. We've had, when you recruit outstanding talent, you surround them with good talent, good players at all positions. Then people like the ones you mentioned, Billy Sims, Joe Washington, Greg Pruitt, Adrian Peterson, those guys have an opportunity to be better than what they have been in the past, because when you surround yourself with good talent, good things are going to happen for individual players, and they'll be recognized for that. And they all had the talent and ability, or they wouldn't have been recruited. But when you put a supporting cast around them that allow them to extend their talents and allow them to be on stage, it's all because of team effort. and they're all excellent players. But I think if they could have gone other places, that they would maybe just been, also Rands. Well, I go and enjoy the game as I always have. Some years I go, some years I don't, depending on what my schedule is. But I go with family, I go with friends. I like to sit and watch the game and not be disrupted by what goes on around you. I really do like to look at how teams play each other. I like to see when the offensive team breaks the huddle, how we line up in the secondary and what adjustments we make to deployment, movement, and analyze the game as it's played. And that's because you spend 40, 50 years in coaching and playing the game and coaching, that's how we approach the game. But we're not there as fans to look around and enjoy the game. And most times I can do and sit at home and probably enjoy it better because no one distracts you.
Oh, a number of things. Just the natural border rivalry, the tradition and history of both schools, the great players, coaches that have been through both. And then now it's even more special probably being in the same division of a conference, fighting for a Big 12 championship. And the fact that we, go down there to recruit in Texas also is a major factor. And so all of it together, it makes it a great rivalry. It's fabulous. It's like a bowl game, really. It's a bowl game atmosphere in the middle of the season. And, weaving your bus through close to 250, 300,000 people at a state fair surrounding the Cotton Bowl as you work your way into the game is just tremendously, just incredibly exciting. Well, they're focused on the game. You can't help but notice and see the reaction of people as you pull in, but we pay very little attention to it or acknowledge people that are trying to yell at us or make certain gestures. Any of that, we for the most part really just ignore it, and you start getting excited though. You can't. It's impossible to miss it, and it does kind of gets the hair up on the back of your neck and gets you ready to compete. I don't know that I can. I think it's special every year. I don't know that I remember just the one time, the first time I did it. I've been fortunate as a player and coach to been in some big games and good games before. So it's exciting. It's an incredible atmosphere. There's so much riding on the game usually. So every year it's that way. It's just a charge. Being the fact that you use the same tunnel and the excitement around it's just amazing. Oh, I don't think there's any question. We're proud of the fact, not that we've only had 5 in a row, but I'm more proud of what we've done after the game. We've gone on and been in 4 Big 12 championships, winning 3 of them. It's pretty special, and on to 3 national championships as well, winning 1 of them. Which tells you just winning the game isn't what we're about. We're about that is that leads up to the rest of it, and that's having an opportunity to win championships. And I feel fortunate and proud of our team that we've been able to go on and do that in the Big 12 and win them and compete for them as national champions as well. I don't know. We've come out and we have played well now for 5 straight games, and why that is, you can't say one particular thing. I look at them as each of them are individual, and just because you've won one doesn't mean you're going to win another. We look at them all separate, and each is its own entity and own game, and that's how it is. That's how it'll be again next year when we play. It's amazing that play specifically. I was schooling up our defensive end, our drop rush end, who was going to be dropping off of the zone blitz to get underneath Roy Williams, because we felt strongly that that's who they would immediately go to. So when the ball snapped, I'm just looking out at the defensive end and Roy Williams. I don't see what's happening over here. I want to make sure that he's under doing what we had asked him to do. And sure enough, he's in his line of vision where he can't throw it right away. Then all of a sudden, everybody's going crazy on the sideline, and I'm asking everybody what happened. I figured it was good because all our guys were jumping around, but I did not know what happened. I didn't know if we had the ball and what the situation was. And then eventually, I think it was my brother Mike said we scored, and then I got to see it on the replay. But really, I was out watching Roy Williams and our defensive end trying to get underneath coverage on him. Oh, sure. You know, Quentin Griffin's had some sensational games. You know, I look back to last year and Adrian Peterson, his running. Roy Williams that year, just incredible, you know, his defensive performance. Josh Heupel had a day where we won 64-13, where he was just incredible at the line of scrimmage and so precise in his throwing. You know, Jason White, he and Mark Clayton and our group of receivers when we won, it was 65-13, I guess, in that game, that just his precision throwing the football was just amazing. You know, and Quentin Griffin also running. So, I don't know, there's been a good number of players. If you give me more time, I could think of more. Well, not really. I don't put myself in a category with Bud Wilkinson or Barry Switzer or Coach Royal. Those guys have all accomplished so much for a great number of years. We're just kind of getting started here. Feel fortunate to have had the success we have. But I just don't put myself in that grouping or look at it that way. I can't. I'm in the middle of it. We're out here competing, and somewhere down the road, hopefully I'm fortunate enough to be an old man sitting in a rocking chair and can look back on it with a lot of great memories, and I'm sure I will. Hopefully I'll get that chance. Oh, they compare in a great way. They both have tradition and both strong programs. Both in the same division, you know, in a conference with split divisions. So there are a lot of similarities that way, and bordering states, you know. So there are definitely a lot. I said some of the only differences are there's a state fair going around one, and you know, for us in the Red River Rivalry, and there's a cocktail party around you know, the Georgia-Florida game, and our game here at OU Texas is split north and south. The fans are split north and south, and I believe in theirs it's east and west. So other than that, they're pretty similar in the importance and what the game means. We do have an incredible legacy of running backs. I hear other universities claim tailback U. I don't know who would be more tailback U than Oklahoma. When you look at the tradition here of the Greg Pruitts, the Joe Washingtons, the Steve Owens, to Billy Vessels, Adrian Peterson, and you know, Quentin Griffin. It goes on and on. Billy Sims, did I even mention him? So. Marcus Dupree, it goes on and on, the great running backs that we've had here. And Adrian, you know, is in 1 year is sure living up to that billing and what those great players all accomplished. Hopefully he can continue that, you know, through his career and continue to leave a mark that way. But we've, you know, no one's had more great running backs, you know, through their university than we have, or at least we've had as many as anybody out there. Absolutely, it's special to coach in. It is. It's exactly what you want. A game with that importance, you know, quality on both sides, and the excitement, the attention the game gets, and more than anything, the intensity and the way it revs your team up, and you, where you get the opportunity to go out and compete and be in that arena is you know, as rewarding and as fun as it can be. Well, I think there's a lot of things that make this rivalry special. I think the setting, certainly being in Dallas, Texas, and when you walk in that stadium, half of it's orange and half of it's crimson and cream, and just the entire setup. The state fair is going on in Texas. I think it's still the biggest in the world, state fairs, and just all the activity going on. I still recall my first trip down there, and I couldn't actually believe that This was a football game. I mean, it was an event. I played my first 2 games my sophomore year here. And they were pretty easy games. We beat Washington State and Maryland, and I was a young sophomore, and, you know, I thought college football was pretty easy, you know, and I still remember going into the Cotton Bowl that first time. And the first time I had the opportunity to carry the ball, linebacker hit me and knocked my helmet about 10 yards in the air, and so I finally realized that this is a little bit different football game. At times, different years it was different. Certain years we'd go down together. Other years it seems like there was a little bit of separation between the teams. But I think walking down that tunnel, looking over and looking at your opponent, you know, getting ready to go into the pit and fight, it was pretty intense and pretty exciting. But I had both those experiences going down. Just a tunnel experience itself, whether you're walking it by yourself, your thoughts and what you're thinking about, or having your opponent right next to you. There's a great excitement about that, getting ready to prepare to go play. So it's a long walk down that tunnel, and it's a long walk back up it if you lose. Sure, the Red River, yeah, it's a natural thing. Texas is big, you know. I mean, when you look at Dallas-Fort Worth area, they have more people living in Dallas-Fort Worth than we have living in the entire state of Oklahoma. So, you know, we want to go down there and we want to show them how good we are and that we can compete and play with them, because Texas is a big state. Great high school football. We get so many of our great players from the state of Texas that come here and help us go down there to beat them, you know. So I just think that rivalry between OU and Texas, you know, again, Texas is so big, and to go down there and have a chance to play them basically halfway between, even though it's in Texas, we have a lot of fans in Dallas, just to go play them in that Cotton Bowl, about the same distance from Austin as it is here, and just that great tradition of playing that game there for so many years. But everything builds up to that. It seems like everything's built around that OU-Texas game. You know, regardless of who we play before, there's big games, but the OU-Texas game is the one that everybody's focusing on. Sure, I think winning that game, everybody's exciting, and they used to talk about the Texas hangover. You know, that there'd been times in our history when we go down and beat Texas, and then we lose the next week, and they call it the Texas hangover. We haven't experienced that recently, but there is something said about, you know, that football game, the excitement. You know, when I played here, it was the 3rd game of the year, you know, and at times we had an open date between that game. So we'd played 2 games and we were going to go, and we had a week to prepare for them. And we listened to the eyes of Texas every day on the practice field to get ourselves ready, and all the build up the OU-Texas game. I don't think things have changed too much about that. I think it's, you know, it's still, I think, about the 4th. There's more games that they played today, but it's still about the 4th game. But I think there's so much excitement going into that game, and I think a lot of our fans, if we can just get by Texas, we've got a chance to go undefeated. Because, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I think, again, OU-Texas game it's like a lot of the other great rivalries out there. There's so much through 100 years of history, and it's there that it just means so much for us. And I think it does, in many ways, set the tone for the rest of the year. Well, I had a chance to play Texas. Freshmen were not eligible when I played. When I was a freshman here, we beat Texas for the first time in 8 years, I think it was, and they had a pretty good run on us. And the things that I think about is my sophomore year, we were undefeated going into that game, and we were the best football team in '67. And in fact, it was the only game we lost all year. And Mike Vachon, who was a great kicker, had kicked 4 field goals a year before to beat Texas for the first time. And I remember that we ran up and down the field on Texas that day and should have scored a lot more points. It shouldn't have come down to a field goal, but the disappointment of losing that ball game 9-7. Toward the end of the ball game, I guess with about 3 or 4 minutes left in the ball game, I was a sophomore, and I was alternating with a guy named Ron Schatz, who was our starter, and would play every other series. But about 3 minutes left in the game, I broke a sprint draw off to the left. And I went about 50 yards, and a guy tackled me on the 22-yard line, and we ran 3 plays and went to about the 11. Not much time left in the game, and Mike missed the field goal, and we lost that ball game 9-7. So I think the disappointment of that game, even as I look back today, I think that that's one game we should have won. And then I think of 68 when we played awful well, and we had them 20-19. There was just over 2 minutes left in the game, and we kicked the ball down at their end. They started about on the 10-yard line, 12-yard line. They drove 88 yards. James Street and Worcester drove down and beat us 26-20, I think was the final score. Then I think of my senior year. In '69, Texas, they had a great football team. They were national champions that year. And we go into to that game, and we are up 14-0, and we're playing well. And we dropped 2 punts, after we'd stopped them, and they ended up beating us 27-17. So I still remember how those. We didn't beat them, but I felt like at least 2 out of those 3 years we probably had the better football team. And it sort of goes to show you about this game that the best team doesn't always win. Regardless of record or whatever the players involved. It all comes down to going to play that football game. But the thing I remember about OU Texas game is the players. The players I played against, James Street, Woosters, the Coys and Burleson and those guys that were, and Coach Royal, who played here at Oklahoma, was an All-American here and was a great coach there. I think the game has so much class. I don't ever remember as a player having a bad word between a Texas player. We just go out and play hard and have great respect for each other, and both of us are trying to win. But those are the memories I have of playing in the Cotton Bowl. I go to the game. Since I've had my new granddaughter, I have to babysit sometimes. I go down, and my wife and I and my son and his wife go to the game. But I haven't missed too many games. I think I had a streak of about 22 straight that I went to, and then some family illnesses, those type things kept me out of going for a couple of years. But I would say that I've made most of the OU Texas games. It becomes a tradition for people, I mean, it seems like year after year after year, families from all over the state go down there and meet family there, and it's more than just going down for a football game. It's truly an event, family event, friend event. I mean, it just seems like that people have their traditions set each year for the OU Texas game. We pretty much, our family, we do basically the same thing, meet our family down there and friends, and we have spots we like to go to and things we like to do. Then we go with the game, and then everybody comes back on Sunday. Hopefully happy that we won. But it's more of it's more than just going down and watching a football game. There's a whole experience and every family's got a different type of experience, or people meet friends they went to school with. They're living in Texas or live in Dallas. I mean, it's a wonderful event to go down and be a part of each year. Yeah, I remember. All I remember is we had played extremely hard that day, and I thought, well, when we pinned them down, I forgot what yard line it was, inside the 10 or whatever it was, and I said they can't drive that many yards on us, and when Worcester running the draw play and James hitting a pass and making a play, and all of a sudden they're getting closer and closer as time is running out, and they score. Give them credit for it, But I think back to the play you mentioned. I think there's a lot of little plays like that probably over the years that have come into play that would have probably made the difference between winning and losing. But you got to give a right amount of took a lot of courage to go 89 yards against the Sooners in the last 2 minutes, and took a lot of great plays by great players to make that happen. But all those type things. The 67 game the same way. I mean, we run the ball up and down the field. We got plenty of opportunities to score. We don't go score. And when it comes down to a field goal, we don't make it. So those things stick out in my mind. Sure. Yeah, I think it's got the whole. It's got everything. It's got You know, great environment, great setting for the football game, got great players, and certainly over the years when you look at Bud Wilkinson and you look at Darrell Royal and you look at Switzer and Stoops and Mac Brown and all the coaches they've had at Texas, the great coaches, you know, it just sets up great players. Half of ours are more from Texas that come down here to, or come up here to Oklahoma to go play Texas down there. We have a lot of great Texas players that come here. So I think it's just a combination of the whole thing that makes it so exciting. Well, I always wanted to be a Sooner. Growing up as a young boy in Oklahoma and following the great teams of Wilkinson and the great tradition here, I grew up wanting to be an Oklahoma Sooner. And so being recruited by Texas and Arkansas and Nebraska and Missouri, all great programs with great coaches, being recruited by Coach Royal. I remember Mickey Mantle called me, the great Mickey Mantle, and he was friends with Darrell Royal. He, of course, he was born and raised in Oklahoma but lived in Dallas, and he called me and said, you know, you really need to take a serious look at Texas. It's pretty strong for a Northeast Oklahoma boy getting a call from Mickey Mantle saying you need to look at Texas. But I did, but again, great program, great coaches. But I think what the players from Texas said, I had a dream to go play at Oklahoma. That's where I wanted to play. And I never did really see myself playing anywhere else but Oklahoma. We had a coaching change. We just had the worst season in history. My senior year in high school, and I was being recruited by Arkansas pretty heavily. And, you know, Coach McKenzie came over from Arkansas and brought a great staff, and he recruited me with, hey, follow your dreams. You need to go to Oklahoma and be a part of that great tradition. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's what happened. So I can understand, you know, I grew up watching OU football. I grew up with OU football. I want to be a part of it. Well, I think the rivalry is going to continue. OU Texas is such a big game, not only between Oklahoma and Texas, it's a big game nationally. And of course, Mac Brown was a coach here back in the national championship year we had here, and Mac is a great coach and has a great staff and is going to continue to recruit great football players. And we are here with Bob Stoops, who's another great football coach. So I think as we go forward, I think there's talk about new stadium, bigger capacity in Dallas, and maybe movement from the Cotton Bowl to a bigger facility or increase the capacity of the Cotton Bowl. So I think the game's going to become bigger and bigger. And with Oklahoma on a streak right now, you know, it just puts more pressure on the other side to win one. So the intensity level, I think, is going to continue to increase. So this rivalry's been going on for a long time. I think it's just going to continue to get bigger and expand, and I'm looking forward to going and being a part of it. I've never regretted my decision. You know, one time coming to Oklahoma, even with the losses to Texas, because we finished 10-1 in my sophomore year, and we finished in the top 3 in the country. Big 8 champions. My junior year, we were co-Big 8 champions with Kansas and played in a bowl game. I wouldn't trade my years at Oklahoma for anything. The losses at Texas certainly are tough. The loss at Notre Dame was tough. The loss to Nebraska was tough. All of them are tough, but that's just part of it. I wouldn't trade my experience here with teammates I had, was able to play with here. Great teammates. It's the reason I won the Heisman is because of great teammates that I had. The experiences that I had here at OU, certainly the winning, a big part of it, the losing, a part of it too, and the great coaches I had here. I wouldn't trade that. I've never had a regret that I came to the University of Oklahoma. And if I had to do it all over again, you know, I might have traded the Heisman Trophy for a win over Texas. You know, I mean, but yeah, great things happened to me here at Oklahoma, and you know, again, I have no regrets. I love playing here. I love being a part of this tradition.
Well, one of the reasons is there's quite a bit of oil and gas industry in both states. And so you've got people from Texas and Oklahoma that are doing business, but they have their own picks of who they want to yell for at that game. That's one of the things. And another thing is that the states are divided by Red River, and it's a sudden change when you cross that Red River and come into Texas, or leave Texas and go across Red River and enter Oklahoma. And the nice thing about it is it's evenly divided in distance from the two campuses. Dallas is about halfway between, and it's a neutral field, and they divide the stadium right down the middle. Well, you couldn't do that if you played home and home, because you've got student body and season ticket holders you have to take care of. And what would happen is when Texas visited Norman, they'd be sitting in the end zone. And when they visited here, they'd be sitting in the end zone, because all the tickets are gone to students and season tickets. But the way it's played up in Dallas, where the stadium is cut right in half, and it's half orange and half red. And I know I was a freshman in 1946 at Oklahoma, and it was sold out then. It's been sold out every year since. And I believe if they keep playing it in Dallas, it'll still be sold out. Both schools would sacrifice a lot of money if they changed it to home and home. Well, riding through the fairgrounds, going in, I know the bus, all the buses I've been on, and I've been on 20 here at the University of Texas, and I was on 4 when I was a student at Oklahoma and a player. But without anybody saying anything, without anybody controlling it, once you go through that gate, the talk just kind of hushes down and becomes whispers. And they start getting their game face on from the time they enter the gate. Well, the rivalry has just increased intensity. I think more each year. And enough of it starts, enough of the rivalry starts while people are in there at the state fair, and they're obviously in different colors. They talk a little bit and they razz each other a little bit, and there's never anything violent about it. It's just good-natured ribbing and razzing. And they'll yell across at a group of the other color, and what we're going to do to you today, we're going to do it again, we're going to do it to you again, if you won last year. Well, I was a player, and I earnestly played under one color, and it was us against them. And I chose to be a coach, and when I got to the University of Texas and my color changed, it was us against them. And that doesn't mean you don't have any feeling for your alma mater. That doesn't mean, that's just competition. I'm sure that great sprinters or great swimmers that are good friends, when they get on the line and they get ready to start the event, they're both wanting to win as bad as you possibly can. Yeah, the last one. It was a 6-6 tie, and it's the hardest game probably that to be on the sideline as a coach. I think it was the hardest possible game of my whole career. No, I couldn't. I don't think of it that way. Your good ones, cream always has a way of coming to the top, and those good players, and the stiffer the competition, the better they compete. Well, that game meant a lot to us because I was a young coach, and I was working hard at my job, trying to be acceptable. But that one game kind of made our coaching staff acceptable at the University of Texas, and with accentuation, because we had won that game and won by a one-pointer. And I think that was the first time in about 8 years. So that was a big game starting our program at Texas. As far as the University of Texas is concerned, that was probably the most important game that was played in all the 20 years I was here. Because of it'd been 8 years and we weren't established, and that gave us a little bit better footing. Well, a lot of people went to it. When we started the Wishbone here, and incidentally, it was Emory Ballard's assistant coach that time. It was his idea, and he came to me with the idea, and I liked the concept of it. I liked it because there were so many similarities to the wishbone and the split T that I had learned under Coach Wilkinson, and I saw how it would fit in, and we could possibly make a go of it. But it swept across the country because of the success we were having, and then other teams started putting it in immediately, and they had some success. So it got defensive coordinators all over the country talking to each other, what are we going to do about this wishbone? And that's the way the game of football keeps going around in a circle. They finally got it down what to do defensively against it, and it got harder and harder to move the ball in the wishbone. Now, I'm not saying that they totally shut it down, but they certainly slowed it down from what it was at its original inception. Those defensive coordinators all over the country put their heads together and decided what they're talked to each other about how we're going to stop this wishbone. When we were down 14, I was wishing it wasn't going to reach 28. It was a kind of a one-sided game. I remember telling the squad in the locker room that I said, there's a hell of a fight going on out there. Why don't you guys get in it? We hadn't been in much the first half. Well, I think enough has been said about that, and there's no sense digging up bones. And as far as I'm concerned, I think we had it accurate, but that's my opinion, and there's no need getting back into it again. I think enough's been said about that. I think more should be said about the good sportsmanship that goes on between the two schools. And I know this, as a player, we had great respect for the Texas players. And I noticed that in my 20 years here, that those players got after each other during the game. But after the ball game was over, they had respect for each other, And I remember that when I was playing, you knew you were going to be sore and bruised on Monday. You just didn't know who was going to win. But you knew there's one thing you could count on. You're going to be bruised and sore. There's a lot of contact in that game. I don't know, but I've thought about it a lot, and what you say is true. It has been streaky, and there's no reason for that game to be streaky. But after all is said and done, you total all the games up, it's about 50-50. Why you don't win every other year type deal, as opposed to those streaks. But that's the way it's been ever since I can remember. That was the luckiest thing for me, because I knew when I started to college that I would like to be in coaching, and to be playing under Coach Wilkinson and playing under him as a quarterback, and those quarterback sessions that I used to have with him. And I studied him. I knew I was going to be coaching, so I studied Coach Wilkinson, and he was a great influence on me as a young coach when I first started. Now, I copied some things that I was taught, but at least I was smart enough to not try to copy his personality. I had to be me. I had to be natural. I had to be Darrell Royal. But I used stuff that Coach Wilkinson taught me up till the last day I coached. I normally go up to Dallas for that game and then drive back immediately after the game. The last few times I've gone, I've ridden up with the team on the team bus, but they shower and he has to work with the press, and it's so late getting gone that I'll ride up there with them, spend the night, go to the game, and I've usually got a ride from somebody that's leaving the stadium immediately coming back to Austin. That's the way I've usually worked it.
A rivalry is a game that fans talk about every day of their lives, and that it becomes important in the workplace and the household, and it's something bigger than every other game that you play. It's special because it's one of only a few games that's played at a neutral site, halfway between the two schools. It's also special because it's a border rivalry. It usually encompasses two of the top 5 teams in the country when they play, and has national championship and now conference championship realities for both when you walk out of that stadium, that you're behind or you're in great shape as you start looking at the reality of the rest of the season. And it's been that way for many, many years. Both programs have a tremendous amount of pride, and that game is a game that you live with for the rest of the year. Oh boy, it probably depends on the person. When you look at it, what's special for me is I've been on both sides of it. I was the offensive coordinator for Coach Switzer in 1984 at Oklahoma when we played to a dead tie when Texas was #1 in 1984, and then being here for the 7 years. It's probably, other than Coach Royal, the second most important reason that I decided to come back, just to be part of this game. It was probably a lot like being the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. It's just amazing. If you haven't ever done it, when you're driving through the state fair and everybody there either likes you or hates you. And the first time we pulled into the state fair, we used to come right through the middle and drive all the way through the fair. Now they bring us in the back, but now both sets of fans line the road when you're pulling up to the dressing room, And the first year that we got here, excuse me, it was in '99. It was the second year because Bob was the new coach there. There were so many people blocking the roads from both of the schools, the fan base, that they actually had police on horseback with billy clubs getting people out of the way so we could even get the buses into the dressing room. So that's the type buildup. The only one that I've seen better was the Rose Bowl this year. And it's a bowl game at midseason with that atmosphere. The two or three things that are different that I had to learn after watching it now for the 7 years here, somebody yells on every play. You don't have the home field advantage or somebody yells, and usually everybody yells on every play, and therefore momentum changes back and forth more in that ball game than any I've ever been involved with. I was in the press box as the play caller, and it's the first time in my life it rained so hard you could hardly see during the game. And driving into the stadium, I thought it would be empty. There was not one seat available. I'd never seen people sit in the rain and watch a game like that and cheer and scream and fight. And then the first half, I'll always remember, the turf was not very good. We were running sideways and we couldn't stand up. And Texas had the #1 team in the country. We were the #3 team. So and I talked to Gary Gibbs, who was the defensive coordinator, who's now with the Cowboys, at halftime, and we both said, we have got to start running north and south. We can't run the option today. You can't stand up, and Texas is too quick. So we did a much better job the second half, but I remember at the time there were a couple of key calls at the end of the game that are still in question. And at that time, I thought they were bad calls, but I guess now that I'm at Texas with Coach Akers, I have to think they're good calls. So I get a little confused on whether I won or lost that game now. But I do remember we nearly lost Iowa State the next week in Ames in a night game, the first time they'd ever played before, because people were still talking about the end of the game and the tie, and they were still talking about the implications for the rest of the year and what this will do to the national championship. And it shows you how powerful this game is and the impact it has on college football. I did appreciate in the dressing room after the game, we went for two and we didn't make it at one point in the fourth quarter, and I told Coach Switzer, I'm really sorry about the 2-point play, and he said, it was a great game. Don't worry about it. Let's move forward. But it was something that affected him too, because I could tell when you're at Oklahoma, that's the only game that matters, because they talk about that game year-round. When you're at Texas, there are a lot of games that matters, but none of them are more important than the Oklahoma game. Oh, maybe I know too much about it, but I do think that being on that side of it, when I do know how they approach it, because when I got there, I asked Coach Switzer, who do we have to beat to keep our jobs? And they were in the Big 8. Texas was in the Southwest Conference. They had Nebraska, they had Oklahoma State, and I thought it would be Nebraska because Coach Osborne was so good. And he said, Texas. And I said, Coach, they're not even in the conference. And he said, if you don't beat Texas at Oklahoma, you can't keep your job. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's the game. Get the film. Start watching it now. So I do understand that smaller states like Oklahoma and like Arkansas, who have played Texas for years, get obsessed with that game. And it's something you have to handle at this school because you've got all the other games in your state, and they all feel the same way. The A&M game is so important to us. Tech and Texas have had a great rivalry. Baylor through the years has been very difficult in this state. Then you add Nebraska, who has become a rival. You start looking at who we are weekly, and Oklahoma focuses on that game. Arkansas, we've learned, focuses on that game. So we have to make sure that we understand how important that game is to them, and each game has to be that important to us. I don't know. We were 2-0 in the series, and I'll never forget our good friend Bill Little, who's been at Texas for 38 years, walked up to me after the game and said, this is great. You know, this game's always been about streaks, and we haven't won since. So I didn't know. I'm ready for that streak to change back. I think probably just because of the nature of the game, a team gets confidence and they just start playing up to their confidence in that game. And the pressure that the fans put on the players about that game, if one gets down a little bit, they have to fight through it to get back out of it. And we've just been in that rut for the last few years. 2 of the games weren't good. The other 3 were really close and down to the wire in fourth quarter games. And Oklahoma's been really good. Not many people have beaten them over the last 5 years. So it's time for us to pick it back up and pay our dues and make sure that we're giving the nation what they deserve out of this ball game, because it should be one of the best, if not the best, games of the season for college football fans every year. And we've got to make sure that we keep up our end of that game. He's a great player. I really admire Roy Williams. He's a very bright young man, a tough guy. He's changing pro football like he did college football, but he was a linebacker playing safety. And he's so fast. He was at 225 pounds running our backs and receivers down. And great players make great plays in the games at time that matter to change games. And there's 2 minutes left. We're 98 yards away. We've got a chance. We're down 7-3. We've got a chance to drive the length of the field and win the game. Derek Johnson was a freshman. He had just missed a tackle on Jason White, who was the backup quarterback. So we knocked the starter out, and Jason comes in. He's a scrambling guy and an option guy, which caught us off guard. But Derek misses a tackle on a 3rd and 18 where Jason just stepped up, and then he scrambles and makes the first down. They drive it down. They kick us down. And great teams are led by great players who make plays at that time. And that's one of the best defensive games I've ever seen. I mean, both offenses had about 200 yards total offense for 3.5 hours. So if you're an offensive guy, you say, what a boring game. If you're a defensive guy, that's a masterpiece of work by both teams. But Brett Robbins, the blocker, he steps up and does everything he's supposed to do, and Roy just flies over. And then we were very unfortunate that when Chris got hit, the ball was not an incomplete pass or didn't fall. It was intercepted for a touchdown by Teddy Lehman. So, those are plays that great teams make, and you got to give them credit for what a great play that was. It's got to be one of the best in the college football history. Well, when you coach at a place where Mr. Bible and Coach Royal coach, and you sit in that chair, it's a little intimidating anyway to think about. And then you look at what Coach Akers did with his 77% winning percentage, and David McWilliams and John Makovic. And then you look at what's happened at Oklahoma through, you had Chuck Fairbanks to that group. There's just been some tremendous coaches there, and Bob's doing a great job now. The fact that you're coaching in a game that will be part of, is and will be part of, and has been part of college football history forever is really, really special. And it's a game, even though we haven't been able to win the last couple of years, it's a game I look forward to every year, because most people say it's not a game, it's bigger than that. But it is a game, and it's a great game, and it's a fun game. And the fact that you wish more people could get tickets, because only 35,000 of each fan base can get a ticket, but that makes it even more special. And when you have to, I always think about the people that are sitting on that line where the fans divide. They must fight for 3 hours and a half, because they're the people that are unfortunate. The Oklahoma and Texas people sit right together in the middle of the stadium. But other than that, what a neat day. And so many people come to the game and stay outside and listen to it on the radio just to be in the atmosphere. But it's a happening. It's an event. It's not just simply a football game. We talk about that heroes are made in this game. There's guys that didn't do anything at Texas in their whole career except make a play to beat Oklahoma, and they're heroes. They will be heroes at the University of Texas for the rest of their lives and beyond. And Coach Royal called and said something after the Rose Bowl. He said, our Arkansas game will be remembered long after I'm dead. He said, this Michigan Rose Bowl will be remembered long after your dad, and all those Oklahoma games fit in that category because they're so unique, they're so different. It's the Georgia-Florida rivalry because it's not your state, because there's 350 players that sign a year, sign Division I-A scholarships in the state of Texas. A number of young men from Texas will go to Oklahoma to play, so that adds to it because they're coming back to Texas to play in this game. And for all of those reasons, these games will be remembered in the history of the two programs as much as any others for a lifetime. Coach Switzer was great to me, and he's still a great friend. He did a tremendous job in recruiting. He did a tremendous job of relating to the young people on the team. And he took very difficult situations after losses and says, we didn't play good enough. Let's pick it up and go back and win next week. He didn't belabor the point that a loss would ruin our season or kill us. He just said, hey, it's factual. Give them credit. Let's move on. Let's get through this and play better. And I thought he was as good around the, quote, big game as I've ever seen because he had a way with confidence to relax the team and have them just go play. And it was fun. He was great to work for because he allowed you to do what you felt like you needed to do, and he had confidence in you to do it. And when you look at the run that he had at Oklahoma and with the Dallas Cowboys, he obviously is in the Hall of Fame and one of the great coaches to ever coach the game. And I was fortunate, even though it was just for a year, to be with him. And even when it came time for me to leave to become the head coach and athletic director at Tulane, he was all for it and for me and has been that way ever since. The atmosphere is unbelievable at the Cotton Bowl because there's a minimum of 35,000 and probably much more than that in the setting, but a minimum of 35,000 that don't like each other on that day. And they're pretty adamant about not liking each other. And as the buses come in, I'm sure the Texas fans are rude to the Oklahoma buses. The Oklahoma fans are rude to the Texas buses. One's on one side of the road, one's on the other side of the road. And then when the buses pull up, you can't even get to the dressing room. The police have to separate them. So people talk about pregame talks and motivation. If that doesn't get you ready to play 2 hours before the game, then you probably don't need to be playing college football, especially at Texas or OU. And when you first get off, you just know it's something special, and the game's going to be special. And even Coach Switzer told me that the first time I talked to him about the game, he said it's like two Mack trucks running into each other head on for 2.5 hours. That's just what you got. So when I asked Coach Royal about it, he said the first time I ever coached in the game, I said, if a fight breaks out, I want you managers to be able to whip their managers. I want you trainers to be able to whip their trainers. I'm going to whip their coaches, and you players better whip their players because that's the kind of day it's going to be. Nobody's safe in this game, and that's the kind of atmosphere for the whole day. We had Ricky for 1 year, and it was the 98 year, and Doak Walker died the week before the game. And Ricky came in to me and said, can I put Doak's picture up on my locker? We had a rule that you didn't put pictures up, and we changed the rule for that week because he was so close to Doak Walker. And Doak was a great running back, and we were getting ready to play in the house that Doak built at the Cotton Bowl when he played at SMU. And then Ricky asked us if he could wear number 37 in the game against Oklahoma, which was a little unusual because players don't change their numbers during the season. We called the NCAA. They gave us permission. There were some skeptics that said he changed it just to get attention, and that had nothing to do with it. And it was one of the neatest days of my coaching career because he scored a 37-yard touchdown. He took a knee and pointed to Doak in heaven and said a little prayer after he scored, wearing the number 37. And then when we got in the dressing room after the win, he brought the Walker family in and took the dirty jersey number 37 off and gave it to them in the dressing room. And there were a lot of tears in there that day with Coach Royal and myself and our entire football team and Ricky honoring Doak and that family at a time where It sent a message about respect. It sent a message about race for a young African-American guy with dreadlocks to celebrate the life of a 72-year-old great running back who had an award named after him. So it was just a special day for all of us.
Texas OU game is different than any ball game we ever played. It's played in Dallas. You got the two states that they don't like each other really, and the game itself, when you go into the Cotton Bowl, you go through the fairgrounds. So as you go into the game, there's so many fans out there, and you got the red and you got the orange. And the orange over there, hook 'em orange, here we go. The red's over there, down with those guys, you know. And so you've got a lot of motion on both sides. And then you go to the locker room, you go out and work out and get ready and prepare. Then you come back in the locker room, then you go out there. And both teams walking out of that tunnel at the same time. I get chills now thinking about it because it's totally different than any other game you ever play. Half of the stadium's red, the other half of the stadium's orange, and just get after them. Well, it's even the night before. When you go up there and you're staying up there, the fans they come and they harass you at the hotel. And it's all orange and it's all red. And so you walk in there or drive in there, and as you drive in the bus, again it's all red. And it's either red or it's orange, and they're either for you or really against you. And then we were fortunate enough to win all the games I played in, so I didn't have to drive out of there and see the old down with the horns. But it's just a unique game. It's set up wonderfully. I think the fans enjoy it. The city enjoys it. I know the players love it. Not really me personally. In playing OU, both games we were behind 14-0 in one game. We were behind 10-0 in the other. We came back and won both those games. So there's kind of a special feeling getting the opportunity to kind of take it away from them at the end. Well, I think that we came in there expecting to win the ball game, expecting not to run away with the ball game, but not to be that tough a ball game. Texas OU game makes no difference what the records are. It's a Texas OU game. That year, Jack Mildren, the quarterback, great athlete from Texas, so that was a big play all week long. We get behind 14-0. There's something special about the '69 team. We kind of just were steady, as Coach Blard used to say, just stay steady in the boat, we're going to be okay. And so we slowly came back and got back in the game. But we played as a team. We were defensive. We had a great defensive team. We had a good offensive team. And the old wishbone, we'd get back in the game. Well, the only time I can remember, if you're talking about the Texas OU game of a memory for me, was the only time I ever saw him give a speech at halftime or a talk at halftime other than talk about what we're doing, what we need to change and stuff, was at the Texas OU game when I was a sophomore. And I wasn't playing in the game, but when he came in that locker room, we didn't divide up into teams and talk about what we were going to do the second half. The whole speech was what we didn't do in the first half. And he was on the coaches, he was on the players. And it's one of those things like you try not to make eye contact. Whenever he'd move over here, I'm staying behind somebody. I'm just moving with, so he never sees me when he's hollering this stuff. And he is mad. That referee comes in there and asks him, said, "Coach, do you want to take defend this end, or do you want the ball?" He said he didn't care. And that referee didn't know what to say because Coach said, "I don't care." He was mad. And it's just a moment when Coach Royal was one of these folks that had you totally prepared for the game. I appreciate it more today than I did back then. He made decisions on the sideline on plays calling that he was totally prepared for it. So when he was totally prepared like that, he got you totally prepared, which, and again, as a quarterback, made the team run a little smoother. But it's all Coach Royal. And as I get into business and get older and have done things, you appreciate what a great man he was. The ability in the Arkansas-Texas game to be able to make that call on the sideline like that, the ability in the OU game, we had the same thing in the OU game. And he'd talk to me very calmly about this, very calmly about that. This is what we're going to do. And he was unbelievable as a person. He's the only coach I've ever seen that you go into the locker room, and when he walks out in the middle of the locker room, he doesn't have to holler, he doesn't have to whistle, it just gets quiet. You know, I think it's an interesting question, because I think once a team, as you come into the University of Texas, one of the things you don't want to do, or one of the accomplishments, forget about being the national champion, what you'd like to do is beat OU 4 years in a row. So you focus on that, and I'm not saying you don't focus on the other teams. I'm not saying you don't focus on the national championship. I'm saying that it's when you got through, when you're identified, you beat OU all 4 years you played them, didn't you? Or you lost to them all 4 years, and you didn't want to be in either one of those. So I think when teams get to winning, there's a lot more pressure in that game than there is in some other games. And just because I think the rivalry itself, Texas OU, the two states, and the whole thing. No, I've been going to the game every year. We've gone every year, even if we just drive up there and go to the game and leave after the game's over. I've got some friends that have been to the game 52, 53 years in a row, and we sit by them, and it's a neat experience. Of course, when we get beat, and I think some of the things that Texas has done in the last few years, that last year we needed to do, we kind of laid down a little bit in the third quarter and fourth quarter 2 or 3 years ago with a coach at OU like Stoops, with the job he does. He's going to remind his players, just keep hitting these guys in the nose, keep hitting them in the face, pretty soon they'll lay down. So I think we've overcome that. I think we're getting to this, what we did this last year puts us in a position that next year we'll be playing on an even keel with them. Well, again, I think it's one of the things that you come to the university to do is to beat OU, and it's the biggest game. So personally, for me, you know, I don't know how to answer the question, but it's I don't know. It's just something that it's literally when you set out the first of the year, you know, it's almost like the first 3 or 4 games. They're preparing. You're getting prepared for OU. And if you look at it, they'll even talk about it in the newspapers, some of the things they say. Well, I think that this is something we'll use in the OU game. This is something, and the fans down here are talking about the same thing. They're talking about, well, I think we can beat them this year. I think we can beat them this year, you know. And so I think it's a bigger game. It's a bigger build-up, but it's not because of just that year. It's because of the history. Well, truthfully, for me personally, in the 68 game, we get the ball with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. We drive the ball down and score in that to win the ball game. We're behind 20-19, I think. We drove back down to win. Well, in that drive, one of the plays was we ran a curl with the outside receiver inside, and that was my second game to start. And so as I rolled out, I see him curling wide open, and I throw the ball to him. And back in those days, as Dandy Don said, I led the defensive back perfectly because the inside safety was picking it off going the other way, and he dropped the ball. Because of that, we then were able to go on and score in that game and win. And for me personally, to end up with 20 wins, no losses, that was the biggest play in my career. It was one that wasn't made by the other side.
Well, I think mainly because there's so many guys from the state of Texas went across that Red River so many times, and usually it's mainly for the bragging rights during the off season, because a lot of guys usually come back home to their home state and have a few things to talk about during the summer. Well, actually, I never was a big college guy. I was strictly a baseball guy because I grew up, you know, Orlando Cepeda, Kirk Flood, and Bob Gibson, and all those guys. So football was something I had to learn when I came to Texas because nobody wanted to play baseball. And this was in the late 60s, early 70s. And at that time, you had the Southwest Conference and the Big Eight with Oklahoma and Nebraska. So actually, my first choice was Baylor University, believe it or not. Grant Taft was the head coach there then when it was the Southwest Conference. Ended up going to Oklahoma. I saw the bigger picture because what Switzer said, well, you can go to Baylor, but we're going to kick your butt every weekend. So it kind of really changed my mind, and went up there and saw, you know, the great Joe Washington, Selman brothers, and all those guys, and learned about the tradition with Bud Wilkinson and the wishbone. Because I didn't know what a wishbone was coming out of high school. I basically ran the I formation. Then going down to Texas, of course, they had Earl and all those great players. Plus, he wore number 20, which that was my number in high school, college, and pro. So ended up going up to Oklahoma. Didn't realize how many Texas guys was going up there, and that was a big surprise for me, and never regretted the day that I went there. Hey, it's a player coach. Still to this day, some 20, 30 years later, we're best of friends. You know, we still talk 2 or 3 times a month, and he treated his players more of his own kids, really, instead of just a person dressed up in a football suit. And that's the real unique thing about him. You know, 20, 30 years later, you know, he's still in your corner. And the love that he had for his players, not just his players, everybody in the family, as we call it at Oklahoma, that was a part of that program. And he was just one of the best when it came to recruiting. I never forget the time that he called me one time. I was a senior in high school. I was pumping gas in Hooks, Texas there. And it was halftime. I couldn't believe he called me, you know, because he got a game. I'm listening to the game on the radio and everything. And I said, well, Coach, aren't you playing? He said, yeah, but it's halftime. We're up 40 points, and I didn't have anything to tell my players, so I was thinking about you. So he picked up the phone and called me. You know, back in those days, they didn't have three-way calling, cell phones, and all that. So I know he's only talking to me, and I could hear the refs in the background. I said, Coach, come on, it's time to get back on the field. So we was talking the whole halftime. He said, you hear that, Billy? You need to be up here to help us finish this butt kicking. So, you know, he was something else when it came to recruiting. Well, you know, I always would hear about it from other players, but to actually play in it and be there, you know, you're coming out of the tunnel. They always said the tunnel. And it's just like slow motion when you're going through it. You know, you got the Oklahoma players and the Texas players. It seemed like to me, you know, you can hardly breathe, but once you come through the tunnel, all of a sudden the burst of excitement hits you in the face. You know, and excitement to get on the field, and everybody got butterflies, trust me. Somebody said they never had butterflies in that game are crazy. But once the game starts, you know, it's down to business, regardless of what the record is. You know, I know back when I was playing, it was always a tough-fought game. Oh, it was, you know, for a kid coming from a little small town, I was in awe. And I was nervous the whole game because I knew I was nervous because I know I wasn't going to play, but I was still nervous. And just to see the magnitude of the game and the people there, the burnt orange on one side, Boomer Sooner and Crimson Cream on the other side, and Big Bevo sitting down in the end zone. And I tell you, it's a sight to see, that's for sure. Oh, I still go to the game, yeah. I go to the game. It's still a big thrill for me to go down there and be on the sideline and hear all the trash talking, and you reminisce a lot because it was going on when I was there. And it's just a great, it's like a big holiday really because, you know, nobody goes to school that Monday. So it's sort of like a national holiday that wasn't voted in, put it that way. Yeah, I think so, in the fact that I'm from East Texas and he's from sort of Southeast Texas, and he won the trophy a year before me, and I won it a year after him. And we both wore number 20, so we'll always be linked together in that standpoint. The fact he went to the University of Texas, almost went to Oklahoma because it came down to either going to OU or Texas, and so we'll definitely be linked in that capacity. Well, actually, I can recall that we always stayed in Fort Worth, so we have this big police escort in the town. We never did stay in Dallas because a lot of excitement going on Friday night before the game. And you know, the next day, especially my freshman year, you know, coming over, I never had a police escort anywhere. And it was like a big parade and going to the stadium and people are hollering and burnt orange and it's hot and you get off and everybody's patting you on your back and coming through the tunnel, it's like you can't hardly breathe. I mean, it's just, then once you hit the end of the tunnel, it's like, whew, a big explosion happened. And it's a game you definitely remember the rest of your life. Well, because of the tradition of it, you know, even back in the 60s and 70s, they used to lock people up on Friday night and let them out on at halftime here in Dallas. You know, they kind of cleaned it up a lot since then. And the fact that a lot of the Texas players are at Oklahoma, and then you come down here and play your teammates you either went to school with in high school or knew growing up. And the fact that I don't think there's any other game like this, especially to have a state fair going on at the same time, where the fans get together after the game and enjoy each other's company. So it has a lot of things to it that really make it a great game.